What's up? What's up? Guys, I'm getting the settings figured out. How's the audio? Please let me know in the chat. Good evening, all. Tammy, thanks for popping in. This is really exciting to see. I think it's pretty surprising, obviously. Obviously we've got their like voice over there, but just been watching the map here. I think this is going to be the number to watch. If you can't see my cursor, I'm going over the block counter because I feel like they're this like weird outlier that could steal some seats out in the East, and then for sure, I really want to know like in Quebec, what do you guys think? Like, are they going to go just off the charts in Quebec, or are we going to see them jump from like in the 30s to they're just going to clean house and get like 78 seats? You know, I always find that interesting when it comes to politics and you start to hear these guys' backgrounds, and it's like, oh yeah, he was a council member and then a mayor. Now he's running for MP or whatever. And it you do wonder. It would be nice to get the representation of the people who've been like working and living non-public funded jobs. And that's not an attack on Pierre, of course, but it would be nice to see like there's a politician in Ireland who's getting a lot of steam now, and he's like not a uh lifetime politician. He just felt like, hey, if I'm going to get pushed into this, somebody's got to stand up and do it. And it's cool to see kind of that groundswell. Oh, interesting. PPC. Do you guys have any predictions? What are you guys thinking in the chat right now? Quebec, Quebec can suck it. I lost a bunch of subscribers today. Um, for anybody who's popping in and you didn't watch my video today, the end of it was cut off, but I lost a bunch of subscribers today. And I think it was because I do have subscribers from Quebec, so me going a little hard at the Quebecois, I don't think they liked it. We got into Pierre Elliott Trudeau in my video today too. Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, what is this? That's the only options. These are the only options we had in this whole riding. Guys, these is the best representation of Calgary Skyview. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what that means, but this is the best, guys. That's the number one, guys. Wow, you're a chicken parm. You are an absolute chicken parm. A little bit of a dad joke for the Can you guys hear? Can somebody comment in the chat if you guys can hear their talking coming through in the background, or can you only hear me? Okay, yeah. So I'm messing around with the settings right now, Tammy, so that you can.
Those heading to Ottawa in this next
What about
term,
now,
right,
team?
Nick?
Yep.
And we're going to be looking at advanced polls. Of course, we're talking about voter engagement. Everybody was saying how high engagement was during this election campaign, and it really showed with the early voter turnout.
Should be coming through
just
now.
note the ridings right now. We have the Liberals leading and elected in more than 20, I believe that was. 22, that was, excuse me. 7.3 million people voted, Nick, in advanced polls.
Nice.
25% increase.
Yeah, that's really
Gotta
a good
get
number.
used to the whole
more people that
streaming
vote, the
gear, 'cause
better.
when
But
I
you know
record
what, Heather,
versus
this is
when
a
I
big
stream,
headache for pollsters and people want to project things, because you know the thing is, those people at the advanced polls, the Conservatives usually do well.
It records on different audio
We
tracks, so I
don't
have to
know
be like
whether they
mindful
are
when I change
motivated
the
Liberals
settings
and
around.
Conservatives, or whether it's the conservative ground machine,
But
which has
okay.
been very effective and is very well organized and very well funded.
What's everybody's
Okay,
predictions
Nick,
for
left, but I do know that,
the actual seats that we're going to see in Quebec? Because Quebec is the one that I'm most worried about. I think we can flip a bunch in other areas, but Quebec, I feel like, is just going to be like 60% block. It's just going to be off the charts block.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. Those advance votes, very curious to see as well, sort of when they are counted, when they are fully counted. We're trying to get that information. We don't know exactly how much of that vote, for example, even in Atlantic Canada, has been accounted for. That could end up changing some of the vote totals, certainly, and skewing things.
Well, do you know where Green's going to get? So I live in London, Ontario, but I am in Kitchener, Ontario all the time. And there's going to be a Green candidate for sure in Kitchener, like hands down. If you drive through Kitchener, you see so many green signs, and it's insane. It's in the one area specifically, but then this last time that I went through, off the charts block just in Quebec. Cool. Not like across the board. I just think Blanchette did a good job getting the French people riled up, and I think you're gonna have a lot of on the fence people who were not really able to figure out if they wanted to vote Liberal or not. But yeah, in Quebec, I think the Bloc's going to like I think they're going to do better this election than they did last.
Because those are electronic. So to remind everybody at home, federal ballots are counted by hand, which is why we've got sort of this long waiting period while we start to see numbers come in.
I've actually worked 2 elections before, counted the ballots and everything.
People counted either an hour or 2 hours before polls closing. Some ridings, I understand, are even waiting until all the ballots were in. So that's why we don't have this number. But back to this surprise box of all of these votes, this almost record turnout of voting. Like, how can this change?
Yeah, Tammy, London is strangely NDP,
Rana, go ahead.
and I don't know why.
If I think of a new voter, I think of someone who's never voted before.
What area are
what's
you, Cole?
motivating them? A lot of them are younger, and I think they're coming off the sidelines because of the anger around the decline of our economy. We have a productivity problem.
I'm assuming I probably don't have a ton of Quebec viewers today after my video, though.
6.8% unemployment in this country.
I could see some people were mad when I was losing the subs.
One of the most unaffordable places in the OECD to buy a house, 355% increase. That's how much it costs young people, even if they graduate with a degree or a trade skill.
Right.
They can never catch up when it comes to their wage, the growth of wages, to actually afford to buy a house. I think that's what's in that surprise box. People that are saying, this economy has left me behind, and I am motivated to get out and vote.
I can tell you, I voted in the advance polls,
Oh,
and
I've
it wasn't
never
full
heard
of young people.
Moose caca.
It was full of a lot of middle-aged
Okay.
and older people.
Older rustic voters.
Well, no, not
Well,
necessarily
and
rustic. Not
here
my
they are
age, but
in
I
the
would
background
say
right now. They're
it
talking
was
about
older
cost of
voters
living,
who,
and they're
like my
talking
age
about
and
the
older,
economy
who were
that's
thinking
left
to
them
themselves,
behind, and all these
This is an
things.
incredibly consequential election.
There
and we want to
are
make sure the person who
clear
gets elected is
and
someone we can
direct
count on and trust.
reasons
So, I
that
think
young
the
people
thing
have been
about
left
the surprise
behind. I
box
mean,
that's
you know,
interesting,
to use
though,
London
is
as
we
an
don't know
example
which
again.
ridings where it's already
In
been included,
2019,
where it's where
oh,
we don't know which ridings where
Muskoka.
it's been counted. And so you take a riding like Central Nova. This could make a huge difference.
I'll give you a case.
And so we can't. It really makes the
From
predictions
NDP to
difficult
Conservative is a
understand.
huge swing if you were able to get people to do that.
NDP does really well. Mark Garneau conceded defeat in Westmount, one of the safest Liberal ridings, but he eventually won once they counted the advance polls, because we had zero ground game in a lot of these ridings. We had very few members there, and especially in a place like Westmount. So once the Liberals had applied their ground game, they filled the advance poll, they counted up, they won considerably. So there can be real surprises as you open up the surprise
Hey, Western,
boxes.
I definitely think this was a surprise, because you usually see kind of a liberal clean sweep across the East, and that's because, you know, no offense to the East, but there's a lot of people there on government programs. And anytime they hear any level of austerity or government cuts, they just panic and they go, you know what, I'm not even going to risk it. Even though, funny enough, most of the government cuts coming from the Conservatives this time weren't actually anything to do with any level of services.
Wait to find out, you know, what's already been opened, where we see the effects of that. Vashinoma, we'll send it back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anne-Marie, we've got just a couple minutes.
Hey,
until the
Western,
polls close
before you
in much
joined,
of Canada.
we were talking about
Scott, your
how
thoughts on
Kitchener's probably going to end up with a
advance
green
voting and how
candidate
it
at the
may
very
impact
least. There's going to be
things?
one there.
Why don't I give you a specific example just to lighten this
Thank you
conversation
so
up? So we're watching Central Nova very closely. Obviously, Sean Fraser's riding, very
Good work,
marquee riding
Tammy.
in Atlantic. He's, you know,
We'll see what
behind
happens
by
in London.
A handful of votes. I'm told by his riding that of the advanced polls, 3 out of 25 of the advanced polls have been counted, but only 3 out of the 25. So that gives you an indication of what Tom talking about, how you can come charging from behind. So when all of those are counted, my suspicion is Sean Fraser will win this riding because he's been in all 3 of the polls that have been counted from the advance. He's been well ahead. So we may see that phenomenon occur in a couple more of these Atlantic ridings. And again, popular vote overall and all the votes that have been cast, Liberals are ahead by 11%. So I'd be careful about extrapolating what we've seen so far and thinking that, you know, the Conservatives are going to make massive gains on them.
The good thing
Were
is
you
we
guys
only
in
have
on the other
30
streams at
seconds
all? It
left
seemed like
for-
they were all
until-
having
until we know.
problems.
That's even better.
And after we had that crazy internet
Yeah, well, we
problem
do have a
all
little bit
across
of
Europe,
insight into
I found that
who's
really
voted in the
interesting
advance
that,
polls, because there's been a lot of polling done
you
in the
know,
electorate and asked the question,
5, 6 countries end up having no
And the data
power,
on that
no
shows
internet,
that
you know, it
hasn't
goes all
been
down.
that different than what we would
And then
typically
everybody's
see
having
in an
trouble with the
election.
streams.
A lot more older voters voting than younger voters. And now that could be because it was over a long weekend. I don't know. We'll see. But we didn't see anything really surprising.
Double check
at
the
least
maps.
I didn't, in terms of the demographic complexion of those voters. It will. It's probably more a reflection of who had a better ground game in a given riding. You know, to the point that that Tom made earlier. Campaigns with more organization tend to do better in the advanced polls.
And we shall see shortly. Kathleen, I'll get back to you in a moment because we're just about a few seconds away from all of those 267 polls closing.
Yeah, we're about to get more of these political blanks being filled just moments from now. We're just getting prepared for the biggest wave of poll closings across the entire country. And within a matter of minutes, in fact, we'll have results from hundreds of ridings all the way west to Alberta. Stay with us.
I think
this is CTV Election 2025.
The votes, like I said, I actually have worked the elections before, and I've worked a couple of them, and the votes are counted pretty quick. You've got a lot of people there watching. I will say it is interesting that Canada, we still just use those like triple fold A Western saying to buy XRP, guys. This is not a crypto stream, but honestly, you know, if you look into XRP, it's an interesting little project. Not sure if you guys saw it too. Mark Carney was doubling down on his Mike Myers endorsement and showing that ad again, like, oh, look, guys, we're really going to be fighting for Canada. These two American guys. Well, I don't even. What do you even call Mark Carney? The guy's a global citizen, like they enjoy calling themselves. I'm a real global citizen. You know, but I want to be in charge of you guys in Canada.
Where the polls have now closed. Good evening. The tension is high. And
you know what, though? In some of these areas where the Conservatives have won seats, it's kind of by a staggering amount. Like, this is what I would expect more. Like, you see this Liberal candidate who's only in the lead there by 800 votes. That is what I would expect more. But
here in studio, we're lucky to be surrounded by some of Canada's finest political minds as we examine just exactly how we got here and what happens next.
Heather Butts is with us with a look at how things are standing at this hour. Heather, I'll throw it over to you. Where do things stand?
Vashi, thanks so much. What an exciting evening. We've already seen those polls close in Atlantic Canada earlier this evening. Then, of course, now a massive portion.
See, like, look at that one. Conservative blowout.
Now. But let's remind
That's insane.
People of where we were at dissolution. So the standings at dissolution, the Liberals had 152 seats. The Conservatives, 120. The Bloc Québécois, 33. The NDP, 24. The Green Party, 2 seats in the House of Commons. Now, we do have a few more seats up for grabs this evening. That is because there is 1 additional seat in British Columbia, 3 in Alberta, and 1 more in Ontario. That is because of population growth, demographic change, and redistribution of ridings. So we have 5 additional seats. So we once had 338 members in the House of Commons, and that this evening we will have 343 elected and heading to Ottawa. But of course, the main number that we are keeping a very close eye on this evening is 100.
Yeah, don't worry, guys. GTA grew by the GTA grew by 2 million people since the last election. So we'll make sure to get Brampton 3 more seats. Brampton and Mississauga.
Right now, projecting that the Liberals could get a range of seats anywhere from 138
definitely
to
got a lot of people from those areas, if you know what I mean.
That majority marker of 172. The projections for the Conservatives getting a range of anywhere from 114 to 148. Now, of course, these numbers are based on polling data, historical analysis, and a lot of number crunching goes into this. But these numbers will shift throughout the evening as your votes are counted.
Do you guys prefer the CTV or the CBC stream?
And the Bloc Québécois right now projecting anywhere from 15 to 38 seats for the NDP this evening. But again, those numbers will change as your votes are counted. This is a forecast, and the range will ebb and flow this evening as parties perform. 172, though, that is the magic marker, if you will, the number that we're keeping
Steven, what's
a
going
very
on?
close eye on as this evening unfolds. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. That's Heather
Whoa.
Butts with some
Halifax.
early projections. And the big news right now is that polls in much of the country, the bulk of ridings, the majority of them, 267, have just closed. I want to throw up, it's very early, like we were a little while ago with Atlantic Canada. Very few polls reporting, but some initial results. For example, in François-Philippe Champagne's riding, he is currently the Minister of Finance. He too decided, like Mélanie Joly, not to run for the leadership of the party once Mark Carney announced he would intend to do so. He has a very small
Just FYI,
lead
guys,
there.
like when I
We can
talked
throw
about
it
it in
over
my
to some
video
more
earlier,
results.
Yeah,
the
from
Minister of
AP
Finance is
Hall,
actually the one who sells
Liberal
all
has
Canada's
a lead
gold.
of 21
So we can yell
votes
at
right
them.
now. Again, just two of the 236 polls reporting, because again,
You know,
these polls
when they call in the vote
just
counts of
closed about,
64
4
and
minutes ago. In
35,
fact,
we could
in
probably
Gaspésie,
wait on an
Madeleine
update.
and Listigouche, this was one of the first Quebec polls to close. You see there that,
And yes,
again, the Liberal
same
incumbent is
Liberal-funded
trailing
BS
the Bloc
on either one,
Québécois
but
candidate there, Alexis Duchesne,
CTV
who has the lead right now.
is
In Essex, by the way, big,
the
glad I didn't have to
lesser
pronounce
of
that
two
riding.
evils.
Very impressive. Chris Lewis with the lead, the incumbent, the Conservative incumbent in Essex. You can see, again, just one poll reporting there, but the results from provinces where polls have closed are starting to come in, including very quickly here.
Is
a
David
lead for
related to
David McGuinty,
Dalton?
currently serving as the Minister of Public Safety. He's the incumbent in the riding. The McGuinty family, of course, well known in the province of Ontario.
There you
Leslyn
go.
Lewis, the incumbent in Haldimand, Norfolk. She is kind of one of the
My
frontbench
official
people
prediction,
in some respects
ooh,
for the
it's hard to
Conservative Party.
say.
She ran for the leadership
I
a
think
number of years ago. Just one poll reporting
it's going to
there, but she
depend
does
how
hold,
many
a lead of
seats
48
the
votes.
Bloc steal.
And the reason this next batch is so
Because if they
significant, as
can
we
eat
mentioned,
up a
is just
lot of
because
the seats
the
that
rich
would have
seat count
otherwise
there is,
gone
right? We
Liberal
know
in
there are
Quebec,
343 seats
I think the
up for
Conservatives
grabs,
have
and
a
the region
shot.
we're talking about now, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Nunavut, Northwest Territories,
10
represent
p.m. Pacific.
267
Yeah,
of
probably.
those 343.
Yeah,
so
I think
things are about
definitely
to
by
get
10 p.m.
extremely,
Pacific.
extremely
I think we're going to
interesting.
know
In
probably
Yellowhead, we've got some more results here.
within the
We
next
know that the
90
Conservatives
minutes,
has a lead of
because
145 votes.
once we see
Again,
what happens in
quite early in this region of
Quebec
the
and
country,
Ontario,
just
unless
one
it's
of the
really, really close, we're
252
probably going to
polls
know.
reporting, Vashi.
And I think do we have some additional results coming in? I think so. Yeah, we're looking over. Oh, now we're into Alberta. Lethbridge, Rachel Thomas, who's the incumbent there. Public
Skyrim
safety critic,
Warrior,
among a
you
host of
playing
other
the,
things for the Conservative
new
Party.
Oblivion
She's,
remake?
at one poll reporting has a
Remaster.
lead, not a surprise. Michelle Rempel-Garner, 6 polls reporting a commanding lead of nearly 1,000 votes for her. I would be shocked if anything different happened in that riding. It's a very safe Conservative seat, and she's a very well-known member of Parliament in Calgary.
In Surrey Moose Mountain, we see here that the
Oh,
Conservative
Stephen
is
Bonk with a
leading,
good
and
lead.
leading
There you go.
substantially by a vote lead of 407 votes. Again, just one
Honestly,
of the 211 polls reporting there. Battleford's Lloyd Minster.
I honestly
said that, but obviously
thought
very,
it was
very early. And
looking like
Lloydminster,
it was
not one of the
pretty
ones they thought
clearly
they
going to
could
be a
pick up,
Liberal
but
win, and I was
Lethbridge
really
perhaps over
bummed,
there.
obviously.
Yeah, Alberta, obviously, as we know,
we
Conservative
put
stronghold, but we'll
a lot of
see
work
if there
into the
are,
channel to make sure
any
that
gains other parties are able to make there. Again, those results just trickling in as the
book did you
polls
buy?
have just closed about 7 minutes ago in the bulk of the country. We will be bringing those to you, but this is significant, this batch of results, Vashi.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, basically the path to government has to go through Ontario
Dominic
and Quebec, and the
LeBlanc,
path
that
to
guy
a majority
sucks.
certainly has to go through both of those provinces for whomever is able to secure government. I think particularly in certain parts of Ontario, we've heard it from many people tonight, but the Greater Toronto area, like if this is not going to be what the Liberals thought it was going to be, we're going to know there, right? The Conservatives will make significant gains there, or some gains there that will indicate something different happening in Ontario than perhaps the polls had predicted.
And so a couple of dominant storylines today, of course, who will win, who will form the next government, whether it's a majority or a minority. We could find that out momentarily. But then the other, storylines that come below that are the political futures of the other leaders. What happens on Vancouver Island with the Green Party?
See, Central Newfoundland was,
and also with Jagmeet Singh, we saw just moments ago that
interesting
he was
to
struggling
see
in that Burnaby riding of his. So whatever happens in British Columbia, where obviously that is a party where they have the bulk of their seats, that will have a significant impact on the future of that leader as well. So lots of skin in the game.
Also struggling, Maxime Bernier, just one poll, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, currently in 4th place in that riding.
But there's so much skin in the game for all of these leaders. Obviously, Mark Carney wants to keep his job as Prime Minister. Pierre Poilievre wants his job.
What do you guys think of the PPC?
As well. Again, this riding of
give your honest
where,
opinion
Maxime
in the chat.
Is,
I want to know what you guys think.
In last place right now. Again, one poll reporting of 245 with the Conservative candidate leading there.
And we keep our eyes peeled for any additional results as they come in. I think there are some more. It's going to be a trickle for the beginning part because there's lots to count. There's also the huge advance vote portion. We've been talking all night about a record of 7.3 million.
Where did you move from Ringo?
As well, we're looking here at Ajax. We're getting closer to the Greater Toronto area. Just one poll reporting there.
And yeah,
with
Cole,
the Liberal,
I do think
leading Greg Brady, Jennifer McKelvey leading Greg Brady. We'll
Cole,
keep an eye,
I think the PPC is based.
Other ridings in the GTA. There are some
and I
specific
wish
ones where
that
the Liberals
they had a legitimate shot because they would be doing
I mentioned
a lot of the work that we need to be done. Because if you guys watch the videos, which I'm assuming you do because you're here, you see I talk about immigration all the time because immigration is so much bigger of an issue than everybody thinks. And I know that people are very quick to brush it off.
The Liberals are underperforming.
Get on. I don't know if I'd move back there. Right now, it looks like it could get pretty testy over there right now.
The key question now throughout the next round of results is whether that translates, whether that is a trend or becomes a trend, because that will have a very different impact on the outcome.
And Heather had the floor, the ceilings for each of those parties just minutes ago, and even at the
I've been trying to pay attention to the map to see where they're actually calling, because that's what's going to matter. When I'm seeing like them already calling all these Western provinces, this is really surprising though. Looking at the East,
territory, but not that much.
I cannot believe how many seats the Conservatives ended up with already on the East Coast. Oh, Japan.
Atlantic Canada.
Have you already like scheduled that to move to Japan, or because moving to Japan from Canada, it's definitely, housing's going to be better, food's going to be cheaper, cost of living is so much better in Japan. The issue is you got to speak Japanese if you want to get a job, unless you're going to be like an English teacher or something.
Particularly in the riding of Carleton, Pierre Poilievre's riding. We'll see and bring you those results as soon as they happen. But let's go right now to Geneviève Beauchemin, who is with the Liberals in Ottawa tonight. And Jen, what's the sentiment there right now?
Well, certainly it's not that workers are not concerned about the situation in Atlantic Canada. Certainly they're looking at those numbers. But what we're told is that they're looking, of course, much more closely right now at those numbers in Ontario, those numbers in BC. Vashi was talking about the fact earlier that a majority of government here goes through Ontario. They need Ontario, of course, to form a government.
Yeah.
And that would be a very key part. But we're always told that there's the government in Ontario and the majority goes through Quebec. And those are the numbers.
It's so annoying when you look at the actual
right now, the
voting
atmosphere
map.
is changing a little bit here because
you zoom
people are
in
starting to arrive as those polls close.
And you see all of the seats
here, and so we're seeing some workers, some people who were volunteers
that are down here,
in, talking about what it's been like.
And
on
it's
the
like,
ground.
oh yeah, you got some big ridings here, and then you go, oh,
they wanted those volunteers.
What do we got going on here?
They didn't expect anybody to be here before
this
much before 9:30.
group
They wanted
right
them
here,
to be out there
this section
every single door
basically
to
chooses
that coming, that
for
there would be
all
as many votes
of Canada.
As possible. But now those
So
people are
annoying.
starting to arrive here, and they're talking about what it's been like. There's still a lot of enthusiasm. There's still a lot of people who said, look, a few months ago, this was such a different situation. Now we've been door knocking for several weeks, and we're talking to people. There's a lot more enthusiasm. We've been feeling it on the ground. We know that this
probably
is
going to end up
happening.
with
We're just waiting to see exactly how that
NDP,
reflects in the numbers
maybe
up there. But they've
one
got their red
Conservative
dresses
over here,
on.
but
We've seen
probably
people
NDP,
with hockey shirts
and then
on. People coming here and are ready to celebrate here. They're just right now looking very closely at those numbers and seeing just what kind of a party they may have tonight.
All right, still lots at stake, and we'll see what happens when those results start coming in.
Yeah,
Thank you,
are.
Jen.
Yeah, we're staying.
Oh, okay. So you
very
actually already
focused
have
on
that
ticker at the
totally
bottom
in
to see
motion,
where things
Ringo.
stand.
I lived in Japan for a
Huge
bit.
Number of ridings that will certainly inform our ability to be able to say what kind of
I went
government
there on a
this is
working
and
holiday.
who forms it. Let's check in with Abigail Beeman. She's with the Conservatives at this moment in time. Abigail, you've been saying they were kind of happy with the results in Atlantic Canada in
$35K for a house.
In a good way.
Guys, if you're
What are they
listening to
telling
that,
you
that's
about
what could
they think
happen
their
if you have
prospects
low
are in
immigration
Ontario
levels.
and Quebec and
Japan
some of the
is
other bigger
tiny,
provinces that are less easy to predict than, for example, Alberta and
and
Saskatchewan for them.
they have a population of over 100 million, and somehow you can still buy a house close to a major city for $35,000.
The exact same thing. When you look at the shots of the crowd here, we have people with their arms crossed, 10 size on the screen. I've switched over to these headphone, microphone, earphone situation because it just got so loud in here the second there was anything positive sounding about those new results coming in. So this is a room that is very anxious for some good news. But to your question about what the campaigns are saying, saying, or what the campaign is saying. So we have been told that Ontario is they're expecting a positive result. They have less to say so much about Quebec behind the scenes, but in Ontario, which is obviously incredibly important, we are told that they are expecting good things. So that is what we'll be watching. Although I've been texting furiously with a number of campaign sources and nobody offering up anything new in the last few minutes, because I think safe to say it is a wait and see situation. Everybody with their eyes glued to the screen, and I just heard some boos, not sure what came in over my shoulder there at this moment, but it's a very engaged crowd looking to see what comes in next.
All right, thanks so much, Abigail. That's Abigail Beeman for us at Conservative headquarters as they, like us,
funny
Omar,
to give these,
stay tuned
call
for
these
the
red
results
with
coming in
82
from
votes.
the majority of the seats reporting.
Also staying tuned is Judy Trinh with the NDP in Burnaby tonight, and polls closing there in about 16 minutes' time. And what happens in BC could very much determine Jagmeet Singh's future, Judy.
That's right. Omar, I want to tell you a little bit about what a campaign worker just told me about how difficult it has been campaigning on behalf of Jagmeet Singh.
You guys
in
seen
his
her
riding
behavior?
of Burnaby Central. He said
making
that
probably
in
$200,000 a year
areas,
to just
because of redistricting, there are strong Liberal
see. This
supporters
is
there.
what I
But one
wanted
of
to
the
see. I'm
challenges
going to
that
turn her
campaign
down a bit
workers are
more while
facing
we
in
talk
terms
about
of
this,
getting out the
because
vote is this idea of strategic voting.
where the Conservatives won on the East Coast, I wanted to see by how much, how close was it, and then where did the other votes go? Because they always talked about vote splitting on the last one, especially there was a PPC candidate there. You got 287 votes. That was probably not going to be a meaningful amount from the get-go. But seeing that, they got 52% of the votes, and again, see, this is closer. This is what I would expect. Any of these ridings that are close, I would expect it to be very close. Like, we're talking less than 1,000 votes.
Accountability. We were successful in pushing the former Liberal government to enact child care, pharmacare, as well as dental care. We were a key part of that. So they have to make this argument over and over again, because there is this fear. Now, as the polls close in Ontario and Quebec, there are 6 seats that the NDP have. So those are in flux right now, and everyone's watching them very carefully.
I hope the NDP gets smoked. She was talking about
all right, Judy Trinh, thank you so much in Burnaby, British Columbia.
Jagmeet did an interview with that Strombopoulos, and he's like, we did our job. Our job was to just, be a thorn in the side and fight for Canadians. We're basically the reason Canadians have all these things.
Who look to potentially pick up, at this point in time, 7 seats. The Bloc, another, the big story, it's at the Bloc's expense. They're down 6 seats.
Also, what's your guys' prediction on if Jagmeet even wins his seat?
Let's head to Jeremy Charron. He's actually at the Bloc Québécois headquarters, their campaign
Because
headquarters tonight.
there were a few videos that I watched that I didn't put in my other video, and it legitimately looks like he could be losing his own seat.
Disappointing to them.
Yeah, absolutely, Vashi. I think supporters here are hoping those numbers are wrong, that's for sure. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record here, I'm going to repeat a bit of the same story as Judy just did, because interestingly, I just had conversations with campaign staff here that echo the exact same thing as Judy was just talking about. And, it makes sense, because both the Bloc and the NDP have run a similar campaign here towards the end, pitching themselves as a party that could hold the balance of power, and the importance of having that different voice in Ottawa.
Yeah, cool. I think he sucks. I think he's a fraud. I think he's a loser. I think, in my personal opinion, that photo of him with the leather daddy dogs was disgusting.
What we saw kind of at the tail end of this campaign is some serious groundwork by the Bloc here.
There's no way what's correct, Stephanie. The current count? Yeah, if you were just joining, it was surprising, but we did see a surprising amount of Conservative seats on the East Coast.
Ensure you're sending enough Bloc MPs.
We're going to end up with a real serious Ontario-Quebec battleground, which is why I'm thinking all of these Bloc, if these go Bloc, it's going to be huge.
As both of those parties fight for kind of the same outcome here, or the same role, if you will, in the next government.
All right.
Because in my personal opinion,
at the Bloc Québécois headquarters,
a Bloc seat being won is just straight up a Liberal seat lost.
And if the Bloc continues on this trend, you can see at the bottom of our screen now, very low seat count for them at this juncture. That could certainly help bolster the Liberals' chances
I agree.
overall. But
Get the man working a hot dog cart.
And these numbers, as you saw, are fluctuating in real time. The Bloc just a couple minutes ago was at 11, and now is down to 8. And we knew heading into tonight, based on the polling, that the Bloc was vulnerable in the province of Quebec, but now we are seeing the impact of that hit. And obviously, the main beneficiary there has been the Liberals. And so if this continues in other parts of the country, in Ontario, that will be good news for the Liberals. But of course, we have to wait to see some more results. But I'm just looking at the result for Central Nova, which is a riding in Atlantic Canada that we keep going back to over and over again. And you can see there,
Sean Fraser,
how much of that
that'll be big
spread between the Conservative and the incumbent Sean Fraser has increased.
Yeah.
If Sean Fraser loses his seat, I'll be stoked about that. That guy single-handedly was in charge of 2 of the divisions
advanced polls will have an impact on
that were destroying Canada. First, he was the immigration minister, and he was the housing minister, and he did horrible at both of those.
This is not someone who was not a prominent member of the Liberal government. I mean, he held major portfolios under Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
2 major portfolios, immigration and housing, and you're right. And at last glance, the lead for Bryson Jenkins of the Conservatives is 279 votes. And it's interesting, I want to go back to something Scott Reed mentioned on your panel earlier about whether those advanced polls are being counted at the same time or if they're still outstanding, and whether that can have an impact on the final results of that, because it is just so close right now.
Look at the Green Party
Northern Nova
candidate.
Scotia. So that's certainly one where the advanced pollings, of the advanced votes, of those are being counted a little later towards the end.
No, Stephanie, all of the seats being counted right now are more likely to be Liberal than they are to be Conservative. When you start on the East Coast, that's almost always a Liberal lead early.
Waxing
so
and
don't
waning.
Stress it too much.
He's up 1,000 votes now. We'll certainly keep a close eye on this one, because again, this is one that the Conservatives would dearly love to hold if they're going to have a good showing here in Atlantic Canada. But certainly the star seat, or the star riding so far of the night right now, is Central Nova Scotia, and we'll watch that carefully. Okay, let's go to Montreal and Matsumi.
Well, we said earlier in the evening that Trois-Rivières was a riding to watch. The Bloc's got to be worried at this point. All the candidates in this riding, they're not really well known. So what that means is this riding, it's about the parties and the party leaders.
No, it makes sense for them to count the advanced first. I mean, they've got them. I mean, it realistically doesn't matter. They're just
right now, the
so there's just boxes
third after
of
the
votes.
Liberals and the Conservatives. It is early yet. But that's not a good sign, because this riding is thought to be a very good indicator of what might happen here in Quebec. We'll take a look at the other riding in the Gaspé. We've been talking about that for a while because the results here came in about 30 minutes earlier because it's in an earlier time zone. It's really, really tight. It's been going back and forth between the Bloc and the Liberals.
Yeah.
The Bloc
that Ringo, that is the biggest damaging thing that Carney has that he wants to institute. So people don't understand the actual problem with there being a home equity tax on Canadian real estate. So I don't know if you guys know, but I am a real estate investor, a real estate agent. So I've been in real estate for a long time. And I've seen the differences between like American real estate tax and Canadian real estate tax. And often one of the arguments is, well, they have home equity and capital gains tax in America, so we should have that in Canada.
In that Carleton riding where the
But
ballot is nearly a meter long.
They don't really have it in America. If you guys care, I can break down the total differences because there's just a ton of exemptions.
Because not only do we have that long ballot with all
Americans never pay capital gains on their personal residence, and they get to write off their mortgage as they own the home,
first past the post electoral system,
which we don't get to do here.
So could be some delays because of all those names, but it also had. Carleton did the highest.
So you're already looking at, oh, okay, they're writing off their mortgage just on home ownership as they're living there. And then when they sell, they have a capital gains exemption
6 hours before polls close
of $250K or $500K if you're a married couple.
We do not have any numbers out of that key Carleton riding where
so most people in America, depending on the area, are going to be okay if they have a $500K exemption on, because that's the $500K just on
And
the
we're
growth
starting
of
to
your
get
home,
some
not on the price of the
the
home.
numbers rolling in here in this vote-rich
So if you bought for
part of the country.
$250 and it's up to $750, that's
Ajax. This
totally
was a
exempt
riding
from
we've
tax.
been watching. This was Mark Holland's
And that would be
riding,
rare in
not running
America.
for re-election. Jennifer McKelvey running for the Liberals in this riding. She's well known. She was a councillor. She was interim mayor of Toronto for a while. She's hoping to keep the seat red. Greg Brady is a well-known Canadian radio host. He has a show, Toronto Today. So far, Jennifer McKelvey is leading, but we only got one of the polls reporting. This is certainly one that could be a battle, and we'll be watching. And then Markham Stouffville, interesting so far. This is incumbent Helena Jasek's riding. Right now, we have the Conservative candidate, a police officer who seems to be leading. But again, it's early days. But it is nice to see some results starting to come in, and I think shortly we'll be getting a better sense of if there are winds of change blowing through this part of the country or if people are deciding to stay the course. We'll send it over to Calgary. Tara Nelson.
Yeah, that's the
Thanks
that's the
very
thing,
much, Michelle.
Ringo.
I'm just looking at the ticker there. We have one NDP seat on the board so far. There should be a few more coming in.
One NDP seat. But yes, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing that Canada's #1 industry is real estate. But because Canada's essentially #1 industry, like it's such a large part of our GDP is Canadian real estate. And as a country, we've been told, buy your house, pay it off, that's your retirement. And that's what all of the boomers have done. So as a result, actually, Ringo, I gotta fact check you on the Carney selling Canada's gold thing, because that's not accurate. But we told Canadians, buy a house, retire, that's your retirement. And then if they are to now institute a tax on that, it's like you just take the rug out from everybody who built the entire retirement around that. And I don't think that was a good thing, but because, necessarily having your house being your #1 investment as far as your retirement planning, not always the best, but that's just the way Canada is designed currently. And Ringo, the gold was sold way before Carney. He sold hardly any. And he didn't even sell it. The Bank of Canada does not have the authority to sell gold. It's the finance ministers, being delegated through, obviously, whoever's the prime minister, but the finance ministers actually signed the paperwork to sell the gold, but the Bank of Canada has no authority to sell gold.
Liberals are also banking on retaining North Vancouver Capilano, which is held by Cabinet Minister Jonathan Wilkinson. And he won handily last time around. We're also watching Burnaby North Seymour, held by Terry Beach. He's been the MP there
Roman
since
Babber.
2015. A career highlight for him, toppling longtime NDPer Sven Robinson in 2019. The main challenger.
Okay, Ahmed Hussein,
now,
that guy's
though,
got to
appears
go.
be
That guy
the Conservatives.
sucks.
Back to you, Omar Bashi.
All right, Mijung, thank you so much. Let's bring in our chief financial correspondent, Amanda Lang, right now. And we're watching the story now developing in Quebec, right? This collapse of the Bloc Québécois, which is something we had seen heading into this, but now we're seeing to what extent this is playing out. Tell us a little bit about the tariff-sensitive areas of Quebec and how that's impacting what we're seeing now.
Yeah, and so interesting because we knew, of course, that the electorally important Quebec, that the Bloc would need to be ceding seats to
Ringo,
Liberals if
I
the
agree
Liberals
on
could
the
form a majority
even
government.
being in real estate,
And
like
we
real
are
estate's
seeing,
my main
thanks to our friends at
investment,
the Chamber of
and
Commerce, their
but I don't
business
think that
data
should be the
lab
case. The only
calculated
reason I did
tariff
that
sensitivity of
is
some
because we
regions,
live in
and some of
Canada,
them are very much
and if
in
you want to
play.
protect
So on that list
your
is
assets in Canada, you
Hartford, which
buy
is,
real
of course,
estate.
on
But
the
I don't
St.
think that's
Lawrence, right
necessarily
between
how it
Quebec
should
City
be
and
set up, but that
Montreal.
is how it's
It's
currently
super
set up.
sensitive to tariffs.
But it
And
sucks
at
a
the
lot of
moment
money out of the
shows the
economy
Liberals leading.
when people are
It's
too
early,
scared to sell,
but
which is
pretty
why in my
a
video,
pretty sizable lead at the
I
moment,
talked
and
about
the
it. One of
incumbent
the
Bloc,
best
is in
things
third place,
that
a
Pierre
narrow third,
offered
but still.
was the capital gains exemption if you invest it back in Canada, because there are a lot of mom and pop landlords who want to sell their homes because they would love a lower stress, hands-off way to, sell that house and put their money to work. But if you're going to be punished for selling a house and then there's nowhere else to put it now, it's like, okay, well, my house is paid off, I guess I just won't sell it. But even there's in my city, there's restaurants and stuff that have been growing and doing really well where I know the owners and they're like, oh, I'd love to grow, I'd love to expand it, I'd love to do these things. It's like, well, imagine you could sell a real estate property and put that into a restaurant, which is now going to create jobs you know, create business equity, all these things, be so much better than just having all that money tied up in a house. But again, we should not be taxing personal homes. That's insane.
In Alberta has reclaimed her seat as the incumbent candidate, very well-known MP in Alberta.
Interesting, actually, Calgary, another one of the very tariff-sensitive regions, but that's not expected to tilt it towards the Liberals particularly.
If this does hold in Quebec, how significant do you think it is? I mean, I know
Ahmed Khan with 272 votes. How embarrassing!
To be a part of their story.
How embarrassing for
That
Ahmed.
we've seen that showed anywhere approaching a Liberal majority meant the
NDP were just such jokes. I don't. Who's the 272 who voted NDP? Going, yeah, I want this guy
but it's very interesting
to represent me with Jagmeet.
Key ridings in play when the incumbent's in third place. That says that there's something different in the air.
And we keep talking about this collapse. I mean, just to contextualize it right now, and again, it is.
Oh,
early,
Virginia, thank you
The Bloc Québécois had 32 seats
for the gifted membership. That's awesome.
13 seats based on
Thank you for doing that. That was really nice.
In 2 seconds time. Amanda, this is another region of the country.
Virginia, what part of the country are you from?
Closely for,
I've been trying to get a general idea of where everybody in the chat is from.
It's not as exposed to the U.S.-Canada situation as other parts of the country are, but still when it comes to softwood lumber and those sectors, that's big in that part.
In some ways, of course, BC has been suffering from tariffs much longer.
Actually, I want to hear about this because this has been a bunch of misinformation about BC and tariffs.
But it does, of course, stand a little bit apart from the Western sentiment, which has been a little bit divided over how to manage tariffs. You might get more of that national fervor out of BC here. So it will be, I think you've nailed it. The question will be whether you see the weakness in the NDP flowing to the Liberals. Not much hope for the Conservatives there.
Polls are now closed across the country. This is a big moment. We will start to see more results come in, more definitive of a look at who will form government, who will become
So I was going to talk about this in one of my videos, and I probably still will.
You're looking at some potential
The Liberals used tariffs and Trump as the #1 boogeyman, and this is how they won so many seats, and this is how they won over so many of these boomers who decided that we had to take on Trump. Here's why, like, they did such a good job with that, to their credit, because they got the boomers riled up. But when you look at the actual tariffs, for example, lumber tariffs have existed for so long, and Canada has been so anti-competitive from a business perspective that 2 of the largest lumber producers in Canada, before Mark Carney, before I think it was in 2021 or 2022,
Omar, thank you so much. Of course,
moved down to America, down to these southern states where they're paying way less tax. They don't have to worry about tariffs. So these were already massive companies that were leaving Canada due to existing tariffs way before this tariff war.
Projections as of right now, in this moment in time, projecting the Liberals could get a minimum of 146 or a maximum of 178 seats, potentially, possibly crossing that 172 marker point of a majority government. They also are projecting the Conservatives could get a range of anywhere from 117 to 146 seats. But these numbers are shifting as your votes are counted. Of course, this has to do with historical data, riding demographics, a lot of research, and of course, the numbers that are coming in this evening as your votes are counted. Projections right now also for the NDP and the Bloc Québécois, we're watching that closely. But again, the majority
It will be interesting to see if anybody gets a majority. But Corin, I just saw your comment there that you expect a CBDC if Carney gets in. I would not be surprised. Canada is used as a testing ground for a lot of the globalist policies. One of those specifically being the CBDCs. We've seen the government talk about it. We've seen all these things, which is why, you know, whenever I talk about Wealthsimple and investing as like an alternative platform, guys, I'm not sponsored by Wealthsimple at all. I just like Wealthsimple because they're away from the big 5 banks. You get way more custody over your own stuff that you're like wanting to invest in, way more control, and lower fees. There's a ton of products there. So I like we need more competition in the finance industry.
working class suburbs
help
of the
keep
Fraser River, the NDP second choice
those
ballot
oligopolies
can be
down.
2-to-1 Conservative over Liberal. But for most of the province, and certainly in Metro Vancouver, the second choice for NDP voters breaks 2-to-1 Liberal over Conservative.
Yeah,
So I think
Trump's been
you'll
in
see-
office for
you'll
3
see
months.
basically
Canada's been going
Liberals and
downhill for
members of
10
Parliament
years.
coming out
Exactly.
of British
But,
Columbia.
I mean-
You'll see Reds and Blues. I think maybe a couple New Democrats, Jenny Kwan probably in Vancouver East, Don Davies perhaps in Vancouver Kingsway, Peter Julian.
Trump's not helping.
And those will probably be the only
That's
three.
for
I
sure.
don't think Elizabeth May will win on the island.
Not helping himself.
And so
He's not helping
interesting. You know,
us.
All the aggregating polling data that
But,
we show,
I mean, it's his job to look
for
after
two
America.
provinces
That's
in
why
British
you can't be
Columbia
mad at
show
a
third of
leader
seats in the
trying
province
to
being,
build their own
up for
country.
grabs, either two-way fights, three-way fights.
Yeah.
So as the polls close,
Yeah, we are Raccoon City. We're honestly, Canada's a bit of a canary in a coal mine when it comes to most of these globalist policies, honestly. And I don't know what it is about Canadians, but for some reason Canadians take everything at face value. They don't ask questions. They are huge when it comes to, you got to trust the experts. You got to trust this. Like, oh, this guy sucks. Isn't this the guy who was caught lying about his military record? Am I wrong?
Both of you are from there.
Yeah.
They have an opportunity there. And also, let's not forget, there's also Kelowna.
No, I swear he's the guy who was caught lying about his military record.
Well, Steve Fewer, who's actually running again, he used to be the member of parliament there. So we have an opportunity there. I think BC is going to be have a very strong showing for the Liberals, I believe. And it's going to send a very strong message for the rest of Canada as well.
Pierre probably ever spent more time in British Columbia than any leader in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And he had a particular focus on Vancouver Island, and I think that'll show up well tonight.
Well, and what you'll see on Vancouver Island is going to be, I mean, first of all, can I just say how exciting it is as a British Columbian that we could be deciding the election tonight? I think finally, it's about time. We're in Canada. So the Vancouver Island, you look at the bottom half of it,
Yeah,
it is
good point,
tight
Corn.
three-way races. And the Liberals are probably going to do well in some of those ridings. A lot of them are quite a bit.
Canada spent a lot of time
communities and
moving away from God, and then you have they put all their faith in the system, and then that's just what they choose to believe. And
for sure, because working class voters, mill towns, old mining
yeah,
towns,
Doug
those
Ford,
kinds of places
because I cannot imagine Doug Ford thinking that he could sabotage Pierre and then get enough goodwill from conservatives to now become the conservative leader. That doesn't make any sense.
Just about anywhere else in the province other than kind of northern British Columbia. So it's going to be Canada. I heard somebody say earlier, BC is like a microcosm of the whole country. I think it was Scott Reed, and I think that's going to turn out to be true tonight.
I'm going to keep going. I can hear this music, and I don't know if it's like the Oscars where they're going to sing a song.
And who was that commented that
yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the
Trump will annex us if the Liberals win? Because I totally agree. I think it looks like not all the chats are coming through. But it
pivotal moment in this unprecedented campaign. We are about to make a call.
I think
for major declaration from the CTV News decision desk.
Ooh.
This will be your next government. We are getting the results momentarily. Seconds from now, it's a time we've all been waiting for. And there you have it. CTV News decision desk declaring a Liberal win. We know that the Liberals will be forming the next government of Canada. The big
what are they basing that on? Well,
will it be
that's not a good map.
Or a minority. And this is a live shot you're looking at. I believe it's at the Liberal Party headquarters in Ottawa.
So personally, okay, so if you guys heard that, CTV just announced Liberal win. Now it's just up to if it is a majority or a minority. And somebody commented that if the Liberals win, Trump's going to annex us. And I think the most...
It's been 20 years since a party has been able to win.
Yeah, Christian values. We've abandoned Christian values, a Western.
Or it's a majority. But to come back from the sort of depths of despair that they faced last year and over really the last 2 years, and to be able to pull off a win certainly speaks
I agree,
to,
Ringo. Canada had an amazing immigration program, globally respected. We were the perfect and most ideal example of what a nation could look like with a relatively high level of immigration. And that's not saying close to what we're at now. I'm saying like capping at 200,000, 250 a year, making sure we can absorb those amounts, and those people who come and we spend all the time making sure that they hit the point systems are people like yourself who come from Iran, who said, hey, I came to Canada for Canada. I wanted to make sure that I could have a life in Canada with my kids. And the Liberals don't care about that anymore. They care about getting the most amount of people in here possible without checking anybody.
I've been texting a number of Liberals.
Let's hear this. I want to hear the justification. They're calling this too early, in my opinion.
When I was talking to a number of people before coming on, just here before.
Oh, this guy was lying about the press scrum.
A number of them were cautiously optimistic. That was the buzz phrase going through here, but really they were worried a little bit about
Turtle
how
Tortuga,
these
I
numbers
agree.
were
That's
going
an
to
early
be.
call.
The get out the vote issue, of course, as well. I'd spoken to one staffer who said that they saw big numbers in the early voting today, especially. They have these types of bingo cards where they essentially catch up with voters afterwards, and they were checking off people very early in the day. So they're very confident that their people were getting out there and getting to vote. Highly motivated, as we know. A lot of people were very excited about Mark Carney and the change for the Liberal government. They have been talking about this. A number of people have been going to rallies across the country where I've been asking people, what do you think of Mark Carney and where this party is?
Corn, I did say Christian
Yesterday
values.
in Victoria, as I had said earlier in the show, 11:30 at night Pacific time. People had waited 90 minutes just to see Mark Carney. And I asked one of the volunteers there, and I said, how has the change been from Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney? They said the day that Mark Carney announced that he was getting into this leadership race, they saw thousands of people sign up for memberships to the Liberal Party of Canada. So getting back to what I was talking about
that's actually
about
big.
that turnout, that staffer said to me it was possible. They thought it could be possible
this
that
is
we could see a voter turnout of upwards of 70%.
In this area, the NDP candidate has won, I feel like, 3 elections in a row. So her losing her seat to the Conservatives is kind of a big deal. And I thought, like, that was trending. A lot of people were saying they were going to vote Conservative, and I really, really thought this was going to be different.
People getting excited right now because, as I mentioned, we declared it first. Another network is saying it now, and that is why you're hearing the applause behind me. Likely a bit of relief as well, Vashi, because there were some tense moments here in the last 20 minutes or so. When they saw the numbers in Atlantic Canada, they weren't seeing them come through Quebec just yet, but now that they're seeing them, certainly some excitement. And as I said, probably looking at this and saying they now hope that it'll turn into a majority of some sort, but really they're not sure about that. The people that I were talking to inside the campaign, unclear if they think that they did enough at this point to try and get that majority government. Bashi.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. Take a look at the ticker at the bottom of your screen. It tells the story of what we were just talking about. To catch you up, in case you are just joining, we have declared here at CTV News a Liberal win. We do not know yet if it will be a majority or a minority government. You can take a look at some of the
elbows up, huh?
Leading and elected.
Come on, you friggin' nerds.
That we're paying attention for
it's insane to me that the Liberals are going to win again. But you know what? This could be a wake-up call. This could be a wake-up call for the Conservatives. You guys needed to make more of a stand. If Pierre loses, it's because he was trying to court the left too much, I think. And I get it, guys. We're Canada. People are always, it's so funny because, and I say it in my videos, people say, oh, well, he's a right-wing Canadian politician. Well, a right-wing Canadian politician is a pretty left-wing American politician. So, but I think like Canada is yearning, we're yearning for a more right-wing candidate.
Powerful or this significant was back in 1988. That was a free trade election. But given the relationship that this country has with the United States, how close that is economically in terms of, you know, the fact that we've got family across the border, we've got connections across the border. That is what has been the dominant topic in this election, and obviously voters feel as though Mark Carney is the best steward at this time to navigate the turbulent waters.
No, I listen, Ringo.
With the United States.
I think
that was his pitch.
This was the death bell for Canada as a nation. this was the last shot, in my personal opinion, to consider Canada still a viable. What is wrong with her face? But it was the candidate there. But this was the last shot, in my personal opinion, for Canada to remain a viable country. Because if we, as a country, could not vote for the Conservatives, who are so wildly left-wing as a party, there's no way that Canada was going to be able to recover from this. And, you know, my prediction, we are annexed by the U.S. in less than 5 years. Now that Carney, especially if the Liberals end up with the majority and there's nobody to block them, oh, this is going to be devastating. Not to be like too doomer, but look at
152 to 180 seats. That would be the maximum this evening. And of course, crossing that number, that 172 majority marker that we've been talking about this evening. And looking at the Conservatives, the decision desk is projecting the Conservatives will receive winning anywhere between 119 and 144 seats this evening. And of course, that not lining up with the minimum of the Liberals. And so that's how that math, of course, works out. These numbers based on historical data, riding information that we receive, research, and of course, your votes, because we have been watching these numbers ebb and flow. It's a forecast, it's a range, and so they've been moving this evening as your votes are counted and come in through those polling stations. Of course, take a look at the Bloc Québécois and the NDP. The decision desk projecting anywhere from 18 to 30 seats would be the maximum for the Bloc Québécois.
You know, that's
NDP,
really interesting to me.
A minimum of anywhere from 12 to 20.
It's interesting to me that the Bloc is going to lose so many seats,
that majority, the Liberals
because
could get anywhere from 152 to 180.
He was really fighting for Quebec this time around. He didn't even try to win votes other places.
That magic marker, and they don't get that majority, that's when we really start to look towards the Bloc and the NDP to see how things play out in Ottawa. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. Heather with a deeper dive there into some of the numbers. The Liberals, CTV News has been able to declare will form government. We keep our eye on those numbers at the bottom of the screen to see whether or not it will be a majority or a minority. We want to get some analysis to this significant moment in the night.
There's no way it's already at 141.
Tonight, Kathleen Monk and Scott Reed. Corey,
Where are they calling these?
We talked earlier, Omar mentioned that you made a ton of news, so did the Premier Doug Ford, for criticizing the Conservative campaign for not focusing on Donald Trump enough. Is this outcome emblematic of that, in your view?
I think that's part of it, but I think in many respects, you know, as you reflect on this race, it was largely put in jeopardy before the campaign even began. I think the biggest strategic error that the Conservatives had going into this election was pounding.
I agree, Lou. This is
Justin Trudeau
not the news that I expected.
With tens of millions of dollars of pre-read advertising, to the point where they drove them down to 18-19% in the polls and made it an existential question around the leadership of the Liberal Party. And you know, it's not just Trump; it's the loss of Trudeau. If you think of this election race as if Pierre Poilievre was
Arturo, what do you mean? Why, Arturo? Can you explain why you think Pierre was a pro-Trump guy? I actually, personally, am mad at Pierre. I was hesitant to even vote for Pierre because he is an anti-Trump guy. Because I want Canada to be a strong nation that has a good relationship with America, and he was willing to do the counter tariffs. He was willing to do all of these things, and I was like, we shouldn't be doing that. So, Arturo, you voting for Carney because you thought he was going to take on Trump, it just makes no sense. Makes no sense.
It's a heartbreaking night for Conservatives across the country. And I think there's going to be a lot of focus on what happens next, both inside the party, but also to see what Carney and the
and
Liberals
then
will
Arturo,
do.
like I guess the next question I have too is, if you're going to say you're a Canadian first and a Conservative second, when you have a party like the Liberal Party of Canada, whose goal is to bring in as many immigrants as they possibly can, changing Canadian demographics, breaking down social cohesion, stressing out our social platforms, everything. What does that do for the health of Canada? You know, increasing crime.
For sure, from funeral march to victory, right? Literally a politician for, 3 months and prime minister for 9 days, and now it looks like he will form government to be determined whether it's minority or majority, but definitely a win. I'll build on what Corey said earlier. The Conservatives not only preconditioned Canadians to dislike Justin Trudeau through their millions of dollars of ads, they also did the same thing to Jagmeet Singh, running millions of dollars of ads against Mr. Singh as well, and he's paying the price.
All right, guys, start commenting in the chat. Where do we move?
Polling looks like
we need options to move to.
Hitting what pollsters predicted of around 8-10%, really more like 4 or 5%. So the question is, for New Democrats, was their strategy of moving early to protect incumbents, to focus on those local campaigns? Will they be able to pull out some of those incumbents? I don't think it's going to be all 24, but will they reach party status, or will they, they certainly have lost beachheads in the past, the beachheads we talked about earlier in Atlantic Canada, but if they start to lose beachheads in Quebec or Ontario or in the prairies, that is not a good sign for the party.
Scott, the story of the NDP,
but Arturo,
that percentage that Kathleen
Canada's
just referenced
doomed. It's
is a huge part of the Liberal story tonight.
The face
as well.
of the earth, and then America's just going to pick up the pieces, and they're going to
I think
own
as
us
the evening goes on and these seat totals mount, I think we'll see that it's even more
Pierre was never going to sell
They're really
us
underperforming what were incredibly
to America,
low expectations already, particularly when you take a look at the province
of
of
Ontario.
We'll see as more numbers come in from BC, that could be very consequential in trying for the Liberals whether or not they meet this majority line. I just want to add one thing. I really want to underline this point about what an astonishing, historical, unbelievable, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it if this was a movie kind of event this is for the Liberal Party of Canada. Like, they were dead and buried, covered in topsoil and leaves, left by the side of the road.
We covered their funeral
4 months ago.
For months.
Yeah.
For 2 years, in fact.
A couple weeks after Justin Trudeau stepped down, announced that he would step down in January, a friend called me and said, I can't believe this story about Mark Carney. He's not really.
Yeah, I honestly.
Why would he leave
Trump
the life that he has in order to
single-handedly.
Why on earth would he do it?
Trump single-handedly won
he thinks he could win.
the Liberals the election. I think there was three things. There was three major things.
And,
obviously, Carney being able to market himself as a businessman.
Pulled this off. It is astonishing.
Trudeau stepping down because he had just run the Liberals into the mud, and then Trump just being a loudmouth and getting us a Liberal government.
It's really important to reflect on in this, and that is this collapse.
And we might get a Liberal majority.
What drove that? Because I think Trump is part of that story. I think it was probably a much bigger part of the story with the Bloc Québécois. But I think there's a question as to whether or
time
not
to move to Alberta,
the
Chris.
type of campaign that the Conservatives ran was so frightening to NDP voters that they gave up their decades-long voting preference to vote Liberal for a Bay Street banker, which is not really a likely place that you would think that would go.
Yeah, these people were voting against their intuition.
To give the
NDP being like the communist, the people need to own
a historic level.
everything. They're voting for freaking
may have moved the goalpost
Wall Street.
If the result of that is the collapse of the NDP to that degree.
Great point.
It is a great point. And Corey, just very quickly, I mean, what is the soul-searching moment now for the Conservatives? What is Pierre Poilievre thinking?
Yeah, I want to hear what he
tonight,
says that
and
the Conservatives
what
have
happens
to
his
do.
future?
I want to know what
And
these guys
is the party thinking tonight?
Well, I think there's got to be a lot of questions asked around that, but I don't think there's one Conservative party. This is why you see so few Conservative governments at the federal level. There's really like 5 different Conservative parties across the country, and what constitutes conservatism on the prairies, which is where I'm from, it looks a lot different in Ontario, where I am now, or in BC, or in Quebec, or in the Maritimes. And you have to try to find a through line through these disparate types of Conservatives that often have some pretty big internal contradictions within them. So it's a real challenge, and I think tonight's result speaks to that challenge. And to try to find a through line through those different things is going to be the challenge for the party.
We keep our eyes peeled, I should say, at the bottom and the right of our screen as we try and determine whether or not this will be a Liberal minority or a Liberal majority. Very competitive things going on in the 905, which is a very key electoral region of Ontario, just outside Toronto. It looks at this point, early indications that the Conservatives are picking up a significant number of seats at the Liberals' expense in there. So that's something that could very much inform whether
maybe
this
it's because
is
the Liberal
minority
candidate
or
close to
majority.
there.
And I think we can check in actually in Liberal territory at Liberal headquarters with our senior
Liberal candidate was calling in foreign hit squads.
live for us. Mike, take us inside the room if you could.
Yeah, Vashti, a very familiar face to people in the Liberal Party here with me. David Lametti, former Justice Minister, also good friend of Mark Carney. He has been advising informally. Mr. Carney, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Lametti.
My pleasure to be here.
I mean, first off, these results, what do you think of them? And what would you have told me if I said that this is what it was going to be just a couple of months ago?
Look, it's still early tonight. I'm watching, obviously, carefully what the bloc vote is in Quebec. I'm watching what the NDP does. We're evolving into a two-horse race, and none of us are used to that, so none of us are being able to predict. That being said, I'll say it to you.
Well, it was a two-horse race before the election. These other parties shouldn't even.
Both in the leadership and throughout. I said, Mark, if you had asked me if I would take these numbers 6 months ago, I would take them. And I would tell you that I would take them. Look, we were dead and buried in December. Beginning of December,
Roman Batter might win his riding.
We're going to form government. Now, whether it's majority or minority, I'm hoping it's majority. We've turned this right around. And thanks to Mark. It's Mark's leadership, Mark's personality, Mark's intelligence that got us through this.
No, it's not.
A real change and a backbone that can
It's because people hate Trump, and Arturo just proved it.
Where you were in the exchanges
Arturo in the chat
today. What's going through his mind right now?
Mark's singularly focused on winning this. We'll get to next steps next, but he is singularly focused on getting us across the finish line. Yes, government's a good thing, but next is trying to get a majority government, so we have a strong government to face Mr. Trump.
When you see what you're seeing with the numbers, how realistic is majority?
Again, it's early. Again, I'm looking at the bloc numbers and the NDP numbers in a two-horse race. If
Canada's done.
If we can maintain.
Unfortunately, that is why I titled the stream the way I did.
Seats, I think we're going to be all right.
You had told me a story off.
I had hoped
about
we were going to get a Conservative win,
essentially to the Liberal Party, bringing him to
but
a Christmas party.
I just knew Canadians were going to screw this up.
You to thank for all
I just knew it, and here we are. And my stream title is perfect. This is the Canada is Over party.
He's an old friend, and I thought I would invite him to the party. And there were a lot of Carney curious people there at the time.
Carney
curious?
curious?
What is it about him in your mind?
No, I'm just super curious.
I'm just curious about Carney. To this point right now.
That sounds like a real Harley rider.
The dossiers. I've already seen him in briefings where he can turn the briefing around and say, yeah, I get that, but we're going to do this, this, and this. And he clearly
I cannot believe how over it is.
What's happening immediately in the briefing, and he turns it around to give a direction and a plan. And I think this is something unique. And
this is probably going to be
the right
green.
person for the moment.
With millions of Canadians watching, what kind of a prime minister are we going to have right now? Because
honestly,
you have served under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. A lot of people talk about the difference.
Arturo, you hate Trump and love Doug Ford? Are you okay? Somebody check in on Arturo, because I don't know how somebody could be so wrong. I don't know how you could hate Trump and love Doug Ford. What are you talking about, man?
This is what he is going to bring to Canada.
I got to let you go, but I have to ask you this. You're his friend. Are you coming back?
I will serve if Mark asks me to. I'm happy where I am right now at Fasken, believe me. But this is an important moment in Canadian history. This is an important moment for the country.
He's not wrong.
With an existential threat from the United States.
No, that I don't agree with.
I've worked hard to get Mark elected. And
I do agree that this is an important part of Canadian history, but not because we're at war with Trump, but because we just watched Canada finally sell itself out.
But, he's a cabinet minister. He knows how to answer a question. Send it back to you.
He's a dogged reporter, that Michael Couture.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a good picture into the behind the scenes of what's responsible for this. Obviously, it's Mark Carney, but the people behind him, Mark Mendicino, David Lametti, and Jerry Buss.
Did Bitcoin win yet, Mr. Stumbles? Good question.
people who are, very
You
much
know,
associated with the former prime
I
minister.
should talk about it
in
more on the channel.
executing this win
We should
for,
have had more Canadians
for,
buying
Mark
Bitcoin
Carney.
because
So interesting comments
if you're
there
going to
from David,
be
but I have a guess that he will be
moving,
the office, the prime minister's office.
one of the
But that's
best ways
just-
to move around,
First. I'd be interested to see what
be doing it with
happens, by
Bitcoin.
the way,
So
in David Letty's former riding of La Salle Verdun. Of course, this was
especially going to America, it's all in USD.
The bloc stole, took away. We'll try to track that to see where the numbers are shaping up. But let's get to the Bloc Québécois, which province-wide isn't doing that great, but we know.
Yeah, I want to hear why the bloc got smoked.
Leader Yves-François Blanchet, CTV News declaring him as the winner in that riding. He is, of course, the incumbent. So the story there is that he retains his seat in Belleuil-Chambly, but again, province-wide, suffering quite a hit.
Yeah,
that
Ringo.
province. I want to just get to
Canada for the next 4 to 8 years, and then we are America.
Jeremy, what is the,
so Arturo,
what's the sentiment like where you are right
I want
now
you to know that you are indeed
If you can hear behind me,
part of the reason we will become
cheers
America.
Here. They've been cycling through on the screen the elected MPs, including leader Yves-François Blanchet just moments ago, who received, of course, loud cheers. He has yet to arrive here at Bloc headquarters. To your point, there's a lot of positive energy here right now. They cheer
All right,
as
Arturo.
they continue to see their MPs
Brother.
elected up on the screen.
I don't know what's
but
going
that
on with
number
you.
right now, 23 for the Bloc that you see on your screen. It's not a terrible number. The party had been talking about, whether they would drop under 20, and that would be a significant loss.
Turtle,
and,
that sounds
there would be a different mood here.
strange.
There had been talk about landing
I've never heard
somewhere
of
in that 20
the
to
Paxos
30
Gold.
range, right in the middle. Yves-François Blanchet earlier in the campaign said that he felt his party could be
Not something I
efficient
would get involved with.
25 MPs. He'd like more, he said, but they could be efficient there. So I'm interested to continue to watch tonight where they land.
Oh, thanks,
and
Western.
Where that number lands ultimately, of course, at dissolution.
He's got to buy
33
Bitcoin
seats, so they're facing
and
still
join
a
the XRP army.
but where
Mount
that
up,
number lands
Patriots.
Will be important as we continue to talk about on whether
Mount
or not
up.
this is a liberal minority or majority at this point. Quebec could play a huge role in that. Vashi and Omar.
Oof,
Jeremy, thank you so much.
152.
And as,
You're
Jeremy
getting
was
way
speaking,
too
I'm
close
just
to a
looking at
majority.
Our tracker here, and I can tell you that Bill Blair has recaptured his seat of Scarborough Southwest in that riding.
Minister of National Defense and, of course, former Toronto police
Yeah, that
chief,
guy
well known
also
to,
sucks.
The community out in Scarborough.
Bill Blair.
We are looking closely, though, at the
Retired
905
dog.
because we did have some early
You're
indications
100
that
years
the
old.
Conservatives could be picking up there. Why is that important? The 905 very electorally significant, and of course we've got our eye on.
Yeah,
the numbers
Mr.
at the
Stumbles,
bottom
I
of the
think we're
screen
probably
and
going to end up
whether
with
the Liberals are able
the
rather, to hit
Canadian
that
peso.
magic 172 to form a majority. We are still not anywhere close to figuring that out.
No, we aren't. That may take a while yet. But Maxime Bernier.
Ooh, Maxime
losing,
got smoked.
Defeated. We're declaring in the riding of Beauce and in fourth place of 4 candidates, so suffering quite a substantial loss. Yes, really losing in that.
Oh, the
riding
Conservative
of,
one, I
Beauce
guess.
in Quebec. Let's get to Sandy Ronaldo, who's been really gauging the sentiment of the people. Sandy, over to you.
Oh, Omar, let me tell you, my guests have been itching to have an opportunity to say what's on their mind. But the word that keeps coming up again and again is polarization. So talk to me, John.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our shows and shows across the country tomorrow are going to be where people start to vent, I think, and maybe where Liberals want to brag. I mean, the problem with
I'm going to have to try and stay calm in my next videos that I start posting because I can already see myself getting so
an
mad.
existential threat when in government. So
Okay,
conservatives
gotta
are going to be
remain
very
calm.
angry, and
I know I'm
also
gonna freak
angry
out.
about the fact that, I mean, they had the Liberals
I was
on
already
the
thinking of
ropes,
titles
and
for new
they've already
videos.
put up with 10 years of the Liberals, so it's going to drive them crazy. And one last aspect in all of this is, as you know, Bill, probably from your texts and calls on my show, a cohort of Liberals these days, or a cohort of Conservatives, like to own the libs, and tonight they've been denied the chance to do so.
I know that you're eager to say something, Bill. Don't hold back.
Well, you just look at those numbers, and what you see is Canada becoming a two-party country.
But haven't we always been that way?
Well, no,
For a
I don't
long
think to the
time.
degree we're seeing right now with the NDP collapsing like that. So yeah, people are going to be divided. Conservatives.
A
We're
Western.
already hearing from our listeners. I'm sure you are
I
as well,
think
sort of that core group that tries to reach out to you right away.
You're going to end up
And so
with
far,
a lot of
conservatives
people who
are
move
angry with
out
people
west.
who voted liberal. But
There's
I
going to be
don't
a lot of
think that
people,
anger will
especially
last
now,
long. I think
who
it will
think
turn
there's more opportunity in
internally pretty
Alberta.
quickly, and they're going to say, what happened here?
And
How
then
did
if the
we have
referendum
this in our
happens
grasp,
a couple years
change
after
that
that,
we've
you're going to have a
wanted
lot
for
more
so
on
long, and it's now gone,
provincial
and they're gonna
voters
start to ask
are
questions
going to
of
be
their party.
voting for
The only way
Alberta
that
to
doesn't become really ugly is if
become its own
conservatives can
sovereign
keep the Liberals
state.
to a minority, then I think you'll see they'll calm down, they'll accept that as reality and say, we live to fight another day. We can't have our country divided right now, though. We need to be focused on the real enemy to our country right now is in Washington. That's the real threat.
Ugh.
We need to work together.
The
to
real
fight that
enemy
threat.
is
And
the
those
Liberal
numbers don't
Party
show
of
that so far.
Canada,
But
who has
how do you
spent
begin to
10
heal,
years
right? Given the fact
with
that
poor management, running us into the ground, who've literally spent a decade trying to implement their programs, their policies, everything that we don't want. And I used to say, you know what? I used to say all the time, people didn't vote for this, especially over the last 10 years. I'd say people didn't vote for this. When the Liberals would institute something and they would put something in, I'd say, there's no way that people voted for this. How can you guys just change this? You're just making stuff up and making things worse. They just won again. So every single thing, I don't want to hear one complaint. If you voted Liberal, you did this. If you voted Liberal, you are never, ever, ever allowed to complain about cost of living. You're not allowed to complain about grocery, like the video. Yeah, Josie. It doesn't make sense that they think Trump is the #1 enemy of Canada when they are our most important trading partner. They are the most important to Canada. But honestly, if you guys keep this in mind, as we're watching this, you guys, if you talk to somebody who says they voted Liberal, they are never allowed to complain about cost of living ever again. They are not allowed, because we have watched these people destroy Canada for 10 years, make it more expensive, harder for everyone. And now they're going to vote for them again. When you voted for the Liberals in this election, you condoned all of their behavior for the last 10 years. You signed your name beside it and said, guys, I am okay with everything that the Liberals did for the last 10 years because I hate Trump so much. Ugh, you're all losers, man. Anybody voted Liberal. I want to be specific. Not you guys watching. You guys watching rock, because I doubt if you're in the chat here, you're a Liberal voter. Except for, actually, no, Arturo confirmed. He is. Sorry, Arturo. You're the worst. Bad decision, brother. You better not, Arturo. I don't think you're a bad person, but I do think that you are not allowed to complain about the cost of living ever again. So,
in May, rather. This will be his first time in Parliament.
yeah, exactly, Josie. If a Liberal person says, oh, my groceries have gotten so expensive. Guys, the carbon tax is about to go up again. It won't happen in the first month. It's not going to happen in May. It's not going to happen in June. But I bet you by the fall, we have some level of carbon pricing in place.
And enthusiasm.
Increasing prices again.
That it was going to be at least a Liberal government. We still don't know minority or majority, so they're waiting for that. And now to hear that Carney has been elected is that next hurdle. And of course, you know, this is a big.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Door knocking, trying to get the vote out. Every single vote out, door knocking from our Carney, and they said they really saw a big change, of course, when after Trudeau stepped down in January. They said that they started talking to people.
Canadians are like goldfish.
So they
have a memory for 30 seconds. They're like, oh, Trudeau's gone? This is an entirely new party now. Oh, it's the exact same guys running for the same party? No, Mark Carney, he's a businessman. He's going to get rid of Trump. Donald J. Trump needs to go down. Mount up, Patriots. Yeah, A Western. The UK is indeed laughing at us. Guys, comment in the chat. How are we feeling?
Liberal leadership contender.
What's your next steps? Where are we moving?
Has won her seat.
Mount up, Patriots.
Rosedale. That's what CTV News decision desk is projecting, and has a lead of about 1,000 votes with 10 of the 205 polls.
Guys, Chrystia Freeland is going to win her seat.
Mark Carney's a political neophyte. It'll be interesting
Chrystia
to see
Freeland.
in the days and months to come how he
that lady's
evolves
an idiot.
into that role of a politician, because it is a cutthroat game.
Well, and who he surrounds himself with. So, for example, Chrystia Freeland, who in that cabinet he made just before the
Anita
Anita,
oh, if she wins Oakville,
all that chaos and drama with
she
Justin
sucks.
Trudeau, to the portfolio of transport, like what kind of desire there is to project more change, and how he reassembles cabinet will certainly be something to keep our eye on. CTV declaring Leslyn Lewis, one of the former contenders for the Conservative leadership in Haldimand, Norfolk. I think we just saw Chrystia Freeland. I think I'm also hearing Leslie Church might have flipped Toronto St. Paul's back to the Liberals. Leslie Church was chief of staff to Chrystia Freeland.
Applying for American work visa.
Election for Toronto St. Paul's, really like the
and holding your land in Alberta. Probably smart. Are you applying for a company directly, or are you just trying to go through as like getting a work permit there?
Conservative candidate who had surprised everybody when he did win.
And there we have it, Leslie Church again for the Liberals there in Toronto St. Paul's. Let's go to Maya Johnson, who's standing by in Montreal. Maya.
Wild. The blue is gaining a little bit, but I mean, hopefully we can at least have a Liberal minority government, because if they end up with a majority, Skyrim, Chrystia Freeland didn't drop out. She removed herself from the cabinet with Trudeau.
Yeah, look, it didn't look good. I had hope. I'd say
awesome.
We deserve to be where we were a couple months ago. A lot of infighting.
That sounds like a Latin name there. CV Pacem Parabellum. So I don't know if I just call you CV.
The Trump threat that we all got together and focused on Canadian sovereignty, on
but CV, that's cool. If you can end up working in the States. It's why guys, we need to be doing way more with America. The partnership between Canada and America needs to be way stronger, way more productive.
Resume and the work that he's done before he became a politician, I think that was very important. A leadership race that reinvigorated the team and got people motivated for this election. So I think a number of things, including how we ran this election, which was a positive message around affordability, around fighting Trump, and about the leadership.
A positive message around affordability and fighting Trump.
As well as rejecting some of the negativity that we heard from the Conservatives.
Let's check, Christopher.
That, Justin Trudeau made the right decision in deciding to step aside
I think
to allow the
there
party
was
to
2
renew
Liberal
itself.
seats.
Obviously, Mark Carney does not have any political experience.
There you go. 2 Liberal seats, it's looking like. Well, that's pretty tight, actually, so that could still be weighted.
Exceptional resume. It's unparalleled in Canada.
That's a lot less tight. Ugh.
So perhaps he's a guy
I'm glad it's not NDP, I guess.
We've seen that throughout the election, but again, we've put a rookie in with 3 games to go in the regular season, and we're about to win it all. So I think that speaks
one Conservative seat. I thought this might have. I thought this west side of London might have gone Conservative.
Skills to be able to do that. Again, he is new, and Canadians will judge for themselves. But tonight really is one that I think we should just focus on Canadians' choice, and Canadians are never wrong.
Oh, just a dildo. Okay. Yeah. No way. Did Pierre lose his seat?
All right, Maya, thank you so much. And right now, we're just waiting to see basically if that Liberal government is a majority government or a minority government. But
is that what just flipped there? Pierre lost his seat?
Remarkable comeback for the Liberals, whatever political stripe you wear. I want to throw it over to Anne-Marie right now with her panel. Anne-Marie.
Okay, James Moore, you published an article very recently that said, always look on the brighter side of life, Monty Python.
Yeah,
I think. How are you looking right now?
Look, I'm a lifelong conservative, a proud conservative, but I'm a Canadian first. And congratulations to Prime Minister Carney. He is my Prime Minister, and I
so nobody's home.
Remarkable turnaround.
I don't think there's going to be a vote of non-confidence for a very long time. Carney's totally new. I think it'll take a lot to kind of be able to justify that. I think the Conservatives will look bad if they try to pull that too early. When it comes to BC and Alberta joining Saskatchewan to leave.
And there are some real cleavages and gaps in this country.
I don't know.
I feel left
It's
behind.
hard to. It's honestly even hard to imagine Alberta leaving, which I don't know why. Like, it only makes sense for Alberta to leave at this point. Like, especially now, if we end up with a Liberal majority,
in order to heal those gaps and heal those divides and make this country a more united,
I
better
think
place. He's
Alberta's
talked
got to
about
go.
it.
Like,
He's
look
said
at
some
this.
things. He's seen some examples.
Look
in
at
the
this
past.
map right
But
here.
When conservatives talk about Bill
And you're
C-69, I know it
looking
sounds
at
like a
this. You're going, we got a tale of two cities,
Right.
really.
But
I mean, this does not represent that much of Ontario because those are pretty low population areas. But just looking at
this country, whether it's blue or red, that would heal
this.
a lot of divides. That would make Albertans, make Westerners.
Look how small these votes are.
That Prime Minister Carney can do, and I hope that he's
Look how
he's open to
small
those
the
ideas,
amount.
and hopefully, he is open to doing what any.
Do I trust Carney's ability? Nobody's home. Is that what you're asking?
Just to reach out and to build a stronger, more united country, and to fill those
No.
divides.
We were just listening to Mark Miller, who said, they focus
I
on
think
sovereignty,
Carney
but you could
is.
argue both
We're going
of
to
these leaders and
belong
both
to
of these
America
parties
in the
focused
next.
on sovereignty, Canada strong, Canada first.
At
Ron, I wanna ask you
most,
this. If I'm from
5
Alberta and I
years.
look at the screen and see Liberal
Yeah,
win,
51 and done, Ron. Maybe 52 if they take in Greenland as well. But I do think we're going to be.
Of healing to do. I think the one thing strategically that is going to be difficult is a big part of this win.
How can you justify these provinces
and we know that Quebec is at odds
being
with
part
the
of Confederation?
sector. And so
These areas, like, look at that.
Carney balance that
That
out?
they
He
want
owes a lot
nothing to do
Quebec. Now,
with
we've
Mark
talked
Carney and the
about
Liberals.
all of a sudden
Like,
there's a
the
consensus
reason
on
I'm saying that is
pipelines.
because, clicking on these writings
still
here,
difficult to convince
look how
Quebecers to
small
build an
this
energy
representation
pipeline. Where are
of
we gonna
Saskatchewan
put it? How
is.
are we gonna do this?
978 people voting Liberal.
something to after
Yeah, I
tonight?
think
He
we
owes
can
probably a lot
probably
to Quebec
say
voters. So
that
that's
Saskatchewan
another cleavage. It's east and west. It's not just rural and urban. It's not just young and old.
is a conservative
so
province.
We've got some things to heal, and I think when we look at the results, even if you look at Doug Ford's results in 2025, if Pierre comes in at over 39% or close to 39%, which Harper won a majority with that,
right,
he could actually end up with more votes from Ontarians that Doug Ford did. But we're still losing in Ontario, which is where we needed to win because of a massive collapse of the NDP. Who would have ever thought the NDP would be at
5
4%?
months, Ron?
So
I don't know if it'll be that quick.
That's also a big story tonight to me, to see the NDP, to see a leader that really just drove this party into a ditch. And so I'm sure
you put that on the leader.
I put it on any leader. I mean, there was an
How can you-
opportunity. I think
Jagmeet ran this party into a ditch. You put that on the leader? Yeah, he represents the entire party.
Create a differentiation between
Ron, I
the
think
liberal
5 months will be
leader, who
tight,
someone
but I do
mentioned
think
is a banker, and the type
within
of people
5
that normally
years.
vote socialist and
That's my
NDP.
prediction.
So it's surprising to me that a 4% result for the NDP is shocking. So obviously we'll see a new NDP leader, and that obviously would make a difference in the future. But
Yeah, they need to get a new NDP leader. My prediction, guys, NDP woman is probably going to be the leader. They're probably going to go with a woman.
I'm choosing differently.
If they want to try and, really up the ante, they're going to try and go with a lesbian woman. That's going to be their go-to. And they're going to try and get those real woke votes, try and win them over from the Liberals on the next one and go, look, it's time for a woman to be in charge. And that's what the NDP is going to do.
I do think that Jagmeet Singh has to take some responsibility for that. He had an opportunity to differentiate himself from the Liberals, and he wasn't able to.
Harjit, I'm going to let you jump in, but I wanted to say something that I think is really interesting, is that this became a fight about who could stand up to Donald Trump. But do you think any of the leaders imagined that we were going to have what you are talking about now, Rana, which is we've got to look at how do we unify a country, let alone fight what's coming from south of the border? Harjit, I'm going to let you jump in.
That's that point. I mean, Canadians were united on a message of rejection of Trump, right? That's what this election was largely about. Now they're picking a leader who they felt that can best lead them to deal with Trump. And we can't, at the end of the day, we can't blame the fortunes of one party towards the downfall of another, right? At the end of the day, now it's everybody needs to unite. And that, I think, is very important. I personally think the divide is not going to be as significant with Mark Carney's, not only that...
you don't think the divide's going to be as significant? Mark Carney in charge.
Mark Carney's from Edmonton.
Yeah.
I think also British Columbia is potentially going.
Think of him as an Albertan?
Well, the thing is, here's an opportunity for him
can
to prove
we
it, right? He's
try and lock down an area for Mark Carney? Because according to Mark Carney, he's from Edmonton, he's from BC, He's
BC
from the
also
Yukon.
has an opportunity now
He's
to
from literally
potentially
everywhere.
take the Liberals
Mark
to
Carney
majority
just
territory as
lies.
well,
He's
which
just
I
like
think
such a
can also
greasy
happen.
little
That is
snake to fit in
exactly what's gonna
anywhere.
happen tonight. So
Look how
this,
excited Christy Clark is about that.
exactly. So this is, I
Yes.
think this is what's going to.
Canada did indeed fail the IQ test.
Canadians have sent a very clear message. We are united. We want all of you united on focusing together. I think that's what needs to happen.
It's so funny for this guy to say Canadians have sent a message that we're united when we have essentially all of it going to two parties who are almost, creeping up on a 50-50 split here.
He's a guy with a lot of experience, and we know all about that.
Carney built the pyramids. He was Kangs. He's all sorts of stuff.
I mean, we started the LNG industry in Canada. In my government, he has all kinds of opportunity. Electing Liberals in British Columbia might be 20 of them, giving him the majority, who will continue to support resource development.
I predicted
if we
that
do
would be in Kitchener.
We'll create lots of high-paying jobs for lots of working people in the country.
See?
And it'll mean we can do things like protect our healthcare system, but
all these
also
dweebs
it will mean we'll be
voting
able
green.
to reach out beyond
Chameleon
Canada's
Carney
borders
for
to
sure.
the world, and not just to the United States. He's made diversifying our markets around the world a real priority. And I think he's going to stick with that. I don't think he's a guy who sits around and says, oh, gee, I owe this province or another for electing me. I think he's a guy that says, I want to fix the economy. I want to grow Canada. I want to unite the country. And so that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, then what does
He's going to fix the economy with environmental policies that are going to destroy
a government
us.
now that you have a party, that has had 3 leaders in 3 elections, and they haven't been able to break through. So what does that say, Rana?
Or Tom.
And Tom, thank you.
I want to get back to what we were talking about before in the NDP, because it is shocking to me, and it's a bit of a body blow to see the NDP lose party status. We've been talking about it as a real possibility, but it looks like
it's
that's
the most
exactly what's going to happen.
Seen since my home country of
It is,
Iran.
I think, the result of a very bad decision, which was to lose the distinction between the NDP and the Liberals. And the day they signed that deal, which we actually never saw, I made the point. What's the
Alberta
case going to be
honestly?
On the doorstep? How do you talk to voters and say, don't vote for those lousy
Danielle
Liberals,
Smith, she said she was going to do it,
and
and I want to know.
You've been voting for them for the past
I
3
wonder
years.
though. I
So
think
that
it's going to
lack of
depend.
distinction made it very easy for progressive voters to say, look, this is a time that's like no other. It's down to a two-way
exactly.
race.
Nothing
Quality
fixes
is
an
not our
economy
song, so
like
we
a
don't
quarter
like,
trillion in more
what he's
debt.
offering.
Our debt
And-
payments
and
are
we're
already
gonna-
off the
we're just
charts.
gonna
We're going to
move our
get
votes over
quarter
there.
trillion
We saw
more,
a lot of block
and
writings
he's going
go
to make it up
over
by
to the
taxing
Liberals as well
Canadians
tonight. And
more.
I
You
wanna-
guys, you don't
I wanna
understand what
reassure
this is
Ronna,
going to do.
on her concern
Like,
with regard
we
to
are
what
already one of the most taxed nations in the entire world. And now we're going to be paying more. He's going to go after home equity because he's going to spend an insane amount. And then home equity, we're going to get more carbon taxes. Oh, but they're going to be industrial. Because surely no industrial carbon tax is going to make its way down to the Canadian consumer.
Aluminum that's particularly important in Quebec, but he's not going to try to say, well, you can't help the auto sector.
You're getting way too close to a liberal majority.
Think about me first. That's one of the sea
Well,
changes
Brian,
that we're seeing on
I'm
right tonight.
happy
For the
that you
bloc
left Ontario and you are in Alberta. So if there is a referendum, please vote for Alberta sovereignty, because Alberta, if Alberta becomes a sovereign nation, state, whatever you want to call it, Quebec is done, and then they have to leave. And then if Alberta leaves and Quebec leaves, it's game over, and Canadians will have learned their lesson that, you need a nation of people to stick together and not fail the IQ test, vote in Carney because you hate Trump.
For the NDP, translating to a big decrease in seats. Even though the Bloc sees a decrease as well, their significance in the House of Commons just went up by a whole lot.
And so the question now for the Liberals is, who will be their dance partner? They'll obviously have to reach across the aisle on major initiatives. And this is, Canadians are basically saying, obviously, the dominant issue is Donald Trump. Make it, fix it, fix the situation, show us that you can.
What's acreage? What's acreage in Alberta these days? Because I've been looking at prices. So I had a friend move to Calgary, and he loves Calgary. And so I've had it on my list as potential place I like. You know, unfortunately, Calgary's been getting in a lot of immigrants too, but so it's changing the demographic there. But what's like acreage in Alberta? Like you must be talking more rural Alberta if it's 90 acres. What was something like that go for?
Fascinating development.
Yeah, and Vasha, when you consider the fact that in the first week of the campaign, he did let that word slip.
Cheyenne, you going to move to Alberta?
Quebec, just north of Montreal. When Melanie Joly, Foreign Affairs Minister,
You live in Ontario, right?
Maya Johnson had interviewed her there, MP for Hunsett-Cartier.
No way. 90 acres with a house, a shop, and everything for $300K?
That obviously got
Where?
a lot of our attention in the media. We had asked Mark Carney about it the next day. I asked him point blank, do you want a Liberal majority government because you said you need a strong government and a strong mandate to stand up to U.S. President Donald Trump? And again, he was cagey about it, saying that, look, we want to fight for every vote. We want every Canadian to vote for a Liberal and to have that strong mandate.
Well, that's not that bad. You can't find that in Ontario 1.5 hours.
He would not be satisfied until he finished the job. And in his mind, finishing the job was going to be to get a majority government. Now that that is out of reach,
$300K for 90 acres with a house and a shop.
Who will their dance partner be? Think back to the
What are the building laws like if you wanted to build another house, like a coach house or something?
Phone numbers. And Mark Carney joked afterwards when he was asked about it, it's not like we're going to exchange texts.
Oh, Turtle Tortuga. Oh. Yo
que
comprende. Yo estoy aprendiendo español. Mi español más práctico necesitas. But, oh, you're already in Alberta, Cheyenne. I thought you were from Ontario for some reason.
Leader of the Bloc Québécois to see where they can come together, especially when you consider where the NDP vote is going and if the NDP will have any type of balance of power that they can hold going forward. And again, we haven't heard it in this room just yet because
they cheered Brian. They cheered saying that Pierre lost his seat, and if he lost his seat, obviously, you know, not going to be a party leader anymore.
They were really crossing their fingers, hoping that they'd gotten enough of the vote out, hoping that they had done enough of the work to prove to Canadians.
Yeah, well, the taxes would not be bad at all on 90 acres, but that's what people don't understand. So when you're talking about taxes, it's still the value of the property. It's not on the amount of acres. It's like, oh, the value of the properties that you have. So if the acres are valued low, and you know you got a total valuation of $300K.
In the House of Commons fashion.
All right, Mike, thank you so much. And I just want to pick up on what Bill Carroll said earlier, that the only way the Conservatives
well, CV,
accept this
sounds like you're freaking crushing in Alberta. It's sweet for you. If you could find a way to work in the U.S., earn in USD, and then buy and build in Canada, you'd be coming ahead pretty hard. And Turtle Tortuga, what do you do for work if you live in Mexico? That's always the big question. People always say, oh, well, we're going to move to Mexico because it's so much cheaper, which is true. It is cheaper. I mean, you can live off a very small amount of money, but you have to still create some level of income. And if you're going to be getting a local Mexican job, the income's maybe tough.
The mood has certainly changed considerably since the last time we chatted. It's a much different atmosphere in the room now. When CTV projected a Liberal win, the minority screen has not come up yet at these headquarters, but in that first Liberal win, the room
you know what? The Conservatives are climbing.
Just, not a sound here. And when you look at the faces of the people in the crowd, it's just
$1,300 a year in taxes.
That's scene. I think you'll hear more
so
from my colleague
on
Colton
10 acres.
Frail, who's on the floor speaking to those people. But in terms of the campaign, this was a campaign that was very happy to provide me information when things seemed to be going well in terms of those early results from Atlantic Canada, and telling me, a few times that they were expecting, that they were very optimistic about Ontario and BC. I have now not had any information from official party sources in the last, I think we're now at 2 hours. So not interested in speaking at the moment. I've also put in several
If I were were to move to Alberta, I'd probably want to be closer to Calgary.
We understand he's
But like I
watching
said, when I was
results with
looking
his
at places,
family,
because I thought about
in
buying
a
a
hotel
duplex,
nearby, and has said
because
that he
if I
will,
bought a duplex,
obviously
it would
and speak later, but no updates there as to
make
how
things
he's
more
feeling, what he's
affordable
thinking,
and moving over
or what he's
easier.
seeing at this point, watching those results. Perhaps maybe a moment to reflect on some of the things I've witnessed covering the Conservative campaign for the majority.
Well, David, we're talking about housing options in the chat right now. You just might have to move to Alberta, but if you move to Alberta, you can get 90 acres with a house on it and a shop for $300K.
So in the last week,
Brian's talking about it too. He's got 10 acres, $1,300 a year in taxes. I mean, depending on food costs and stuff, you could live for a really cheap amount in Alberta by the sounds of it. I knew it was cheap, but like these taxes and the amount of land you get is even cheaper than I thought. I know A Western's going to like the sound of that.
Comments about the platform release sort of paused and said, "I owe this country."
What are you going to do for work in Mexico, though, David? Is it David or David? David.
Shift, and it was as if he was acknowledging or feeling
moving to Mexico. We got a lot of people looking to move to Mexico. And Turtle Tortuga, congratulations, retiring early, selling your real estate, and then
point in a rally. And that to me was a real sense of the campaign shifting in that final week and seeing that. And I think I've mentioned this before, but last night at his rally in his own riding, when he said for the first time,
okay, I'm going to go with David then.
Tomorrow, I'll be there to fight for you. And obviously the question.
Okay, so you do have an online job. You could if you could work remote in Mexico, then yeah, you could do it. But it all depends on the life you want to build. Because if you do want to set down roots and you do want to think, have some like long-term thinking, long-term planning. So, mi hombre Turtle Tortuga, he is in retirement stage. So Turtle, I don't know if you moved down there with your family. I don't know if you moved down there or what the situation is because you're retiring early. But if you know, David, I don't know how old you are. You said my generation, so I'm assuming you're younger. Yeah, me gusta Latinas as well. David, Latinas muy bonita.
At the same time, we see the Liberals being held to a minority. What does that tell you about
Brian? Holy smokes, nice moves.
I think, strategists will have a better view.
Yeah, AI could be devastating for a lot of the online workers.
Really does play out when it
David,
comes down to people's
David, if I were you, before doing Mexico, I would look into some of the Alberta options, especially like these guys are talking about here. If you have the ability to work online already, and
kind of late from the Liberals and the Conservatives,
you want to build a life, man. Like, I don't know if you're single. Like, for me, I'm single. So ladies, if you're watching this, I want to have a wife. I want to have kids. I want to do all that stuff. So
which are large, right? We know they're going to take our deficit.
I don't want to be like transient and moving to other countries and all those things unless there's an area where I feel like I can put down roots and build community. Because we're going to need to, honestly, Canadians are going to have to look for other opportunities, and it might just be rushing to Alberta. But Brian, I don't know if there's as many deals in Alberta left as sick as that one. 2021 for 600. Ingersoll, so just outside of London.
And Amanda, as you're speaking, we just have the results for Central Nova. We saw a little bit of a seesaw back and forth, the Liberals and the Conservatives, and we are now able to declare that the incumbent, Sean Fraser, is going to be reelected in his riding of Central Nova. So despite an early lead from Bryson Jenkins, the Conservative, we know that that Sean Fraser will be winning there, has recaptured his seat. Stephen Guilbeault winning his seat in Laurier-Sainte-Marie. You know, you were talking a little bit about what Mark Carney has to do now. In a minority situation, you haven't got the time, right? And we're dealing in a situation at a time when people want results. They want them fairly instantly.
Karina Gould one.
So what kind of pressures, what's the most important file other than the U.S.-Canada file? Because in terms of a housing strategy, things like that also take time to take root.
CV, that's the smartest way to do it. If that's what I would like to do. I would like to own some land in Canada, but I would love to be able to work in America, earn in USD, and then if we do become the 51st state.
And new markets. Those are the kinds of things that might actually get stymied by a minority parliament.
Wow, this is a real battle for these last
in different ways. Will that sense of kind of cohesiveness hang with
seats
us?
here.
Will we get that kind of Canada team notion or not? And that'll be the big question. Whether the other
Yeah,
parties are more
David,
interested
I would
in
look in
triggering
Alberta
an
before I
election,
look
or
into
looking to our
Mexico,
own
because
backyard.
you're going to want
If
some
we've
sort of
seen the
assets,
math,
man.
if we can solve
You're
some
going to
of
want
our
something
internal
that
issues,
you can
we
say
can
like,
offset
hey,
the
that's
cost of
mine. If you
tariffs.
just moved to
They're
Mexico,
not- they're
as
easier
much as
said than done, right?
Turtle's
Internal
crushing
trade is
it,
a
he's
big
there
deal.
with his
It's
wife,
July
he's
1st
loving
is
life,
a
he's
major
got
day, right? That's when
he's got
Mark Carney has
Mexican
said that a lot of
Costco.
these
It's a
road
good life,
blocks
but
that
that's a
we've
good
seen
life
will
if
be
you're
removed,
retired.
and
It's
we'll
not a
have
good
more
life
trade
for
between
you, David,
the
who's looking
provinces.
to
But
put
the
down
race is on.
roots.
I
You
think
know, you're
also
looking
what's so
to
significantly is,
hopefully, I mean, I
you-
don't know,
you
maybe.
touched on this, but if in fact that is the economic agenda
Yeah,
that
A
they're
Western.
proposing to pursue, if you're talking about building big projects.
A Western, I
mean,
would
they
say
run through
this is the
Quebec,
time.
And Yves-François Blanchet, if his
But go to the
relative
cheaper areas like
power
these
has
guys are
just
talking about.
increased despite a decrease
Buy
in
yourself
seats,
some
has
land.
been unequivocal about being the only leader of all four that we're talking about. Even
Cons
Jeremy
teaming
Payne
up with
said
the
he'd be
block.
okay at this point with the pipeline, for example, who would unequivocally stand in the way of it.
Well,
Like, this becomes
Turtle's got a different life
very
though, man. Like he owned a bunch of real estate and then he sold it for cash and then moved to Mexico. Like you got to get those assets first. You're 27, you're young.
What has to be offered to Quebec in order to appease on some of those issues? It will be a major factor. And remember, we are still
And when
fighting
it
a
comes
trade
to the
war. We're
cons
still
teaming up
fighting,
with the
of course,
block,
a president that still talks as recently as today about annexation. So it's not a small issue. We do need the country to come together. It'll be so interesting to see, you know, in theory, you could see, of course, the Liberals and the Conservatives working together on some of these
T.
issues.
Doyle, well, happy to have you
In theory,
here.
that's right, yeah. In practice, it'd be
Well,
something to
you know, you were gonna watch hockey.
but
Now
that's
you're
the
hanging out with
crisis.
us.
You never know.
I'm happy.
If there
I'm
is a
happy you
con,
joined.
This would be it, Omar.
But having just had an election, I don't think. The
Yeah, David,
appetite for
it's
going to the polls
it's
again
too late for you to
is
think
very
about
high.
like, you know,
Canadians
crushing
probably
it
wanna
and
see the
buying
parties
10
work
real
together
estate
and,
properties,
you know,
but
affect,
for
change,
you,
because
if
we
you
are
can
at a
work
critical crossroads
remote,
in this country, as we
you know,
all
even on the average
Versus,
salary, you can
standing by
afford a
with
place
some,
in Alberta,
more
buy
data
something
and
for
some more
300K
context,
or
Heather.
less. It's not going to be the
Thanks,
Taj
Omar.
Mahal,
Perhaps
but it's going to
what
get you
parties Nick might
land.
actually end
It's
up
going to get you a
helping,
home.
the
It's going to get you
Liberals,
actual
in
some level of
government. But we'll take a
assets.
look
And
at
then
those projections,
if you could find a way to
and this
keep
is,
that
again,
and move to
how
Mexico
we
because you
got
work
to where
remote,
we are
now
right
you're kind of
now
in a good
the
spot. Not to
evening. The CTV
not to tell you how to live
decision
your
does
life. I mean,
project
do
that
whatever
the
you want to do.
Liberals
But
could see a range of seats anywhere
I just
from
think
150
if you have the option of
to
working remote, I would
167, so
get
not
something.
reaching that,
Yeah, dude,
magic
David, that's a
mark of
ton of money. You could
172.
easily
The
buy
Conservatives
a
could be anywhere
duplex.
from
That's what I would do.
138 to 152.
I would find
But
somewhere in
we're really
Alberta
looking at the block,
where I could
and
afford to
the
buy a
NDP.
duplex.
The NDP only
Buy a
getting
duplex so
anywhere
you could
from
move
9
into
to
it.
15. This could really play out interesting tonight.
Rent out one of the units, keep your cost of living super low, and then when you want to go to Mexico, just rent out your unit.
And what does that mean for the Federation and for
Grand
Mark Carney and his
Prairie.
government?
There you go.
Certainly an interesting story playing out here. So, Nick,
Then
the numbers are
David,
coming in, but
you
we
could
still
move
have
to
some really
Mexico
close races.
and
We still don't
own land
know
in
for
Canada.
sure
And then it's like,
all
okay,
the
let's say you
answers
lived
yet.
in
Of
Mexico
course,
from
we will be
27 to
heading
30,
to Ottawa. So
but you
we're
got a
gonna zero
duplex in
on
Alberta.
Ontario.
Better
We're
landlord
going
tenant
to
board
look
laws
at
there
the
too.
905
And
area.
a
For
duplex
those
is
of you
going to
not in
lower
Ontario,
a lot of
that's
the
that
risk.
area around Toronto on the outskirts, and we're looking in at Brampton right now. Nick, some pretty tight ridings here.
I don't think
First
the
taking a look
property
at,
costs are going to
Brampton
go down
Strategic
too
Park.
much, Turtle.
Yeah,
I
this
think
is all gonna
rents
come
are
down
going to
to
be
organization.
affected
It's
because
basically
all of
street
the
by street,
completions.
block by block. It's
So
gonna be
if you
interesting
guys
to
have
see
noticed,
whether
like
the
one of the
Conservatives can
biggest
take it
problems
over
for
or whether the
Canada
Liberals
obviously
hold.
is housing.
Just an
So they've been
81
building
vote
a
difference there in
ton
that,
of rental stock,
riding.
but it's
Brampton
mostly
East,
1-bedroom and
Liberals in the lead,
2-bedroom
but
units.
just
So the
221
market is
votes
going to
split
be
there.
And I think this
flooded
speaks to the ground game,
with
and the
1- and 2-bedroom
Conservatives are probably
units,
hoping they
and
can pick up a
then
couple of
it's
these
going
Brampton seats.
to
Okay, and this
not
is
have any
Brampton
3
West,
beds.
Nick.
Yeah,
This is for the Liberals. So just think of the
And so I think houses that have like 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, any single family properties, I don't think the prices are going to go down that much. Personally, yeah, I think Alberta has the potential to be going up, especially after this Liberal win, especially if it's a majority.
This is good news for the Conservatives because this potentially could be a pickup. But check out the NDP numbers, basically nowhere, and the Liberals trailing.
Okay, and let's head over to Markham, Unionville. We'll see what it's looking like there.
Oh, okay.
The Conservatives in the lead by 510, Nick.
Yeah, this is traditionally has been Conservative in the past, so this is good news for Poilievre on this front. But all of these races are fragile.
Wow, the Green are going to win 2 seats.
Let's take a look at another one. Richmond Hill South, still in that Toronto area. Vincent Ho in the lead right now, but another Liberal incumbent trailing, Nick.
Yeah, a bit of a comfy lead for Ho on this front, even with 115 polls reported. So it'll be interesting to see, with the advanced polls, how that actually plays itself out.
Okay, a couple of close ridings, close races in the 905. That is around the Greater Toronto area. For now, we'll send it back to the National Newsroom.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. And you see again the floor and the ceiling there, the max that the CTV News decision desk is projecting is 167. So
okay,
about
so
5 seats shy of the 172
a
majority.
Slight
and have, in fact,
blessing,
a
guys. Looks like we might not end up with a liberal majority. That would have been devastating. I mean, it still sucks. We got a liberal
again, as
government.
I mentioned to Amanda,
Insane.
of the challenges with affordability and the degree to which I think people in and around suburbs, particularly in Ontario, are dissatisfied with the record of the Liberals over the last 10 years and making their voice heard. I think I saw at one point Francesca Sobera, who has been around for a while as a Liberal, again in the GTA area. It could have cost him his seat. We'll stay tuned to see if there are final results in that respect.
Yeah,
but
there is a lot of blue.
Certainly something to watch. I think the other thing to watch is we're assuming the Liberals can find a dance partner or might be able to. But
yeah,
if
a
you
lot
look
of
at
the
numbers,
honestly,
and they're not conclusive at this point, but
Alberta
early
Google,
look at them,
a lot of the
would leave
purpose-built
you with
rentals
the
are really
impression that
ugly.
if other parties wanted to get
They have
together
like no character,
to
no
oppose
care.
them, to
They're not
defeat
nice at
them,
all.
that also isn't
But it doesn't matter. They're just trying to stuff in immigrants to rental units, and that's what the Liberals are going to keep doing.
And,
they want to build
one
tiny
of the early
boxes.
that we were watching through the night is Central Nova.
And that's what they're going to do. They want to build tiny boxes. So, Turtle, to answer your question, yes, there's a lot of blue. But the reason I zoomed into this section of the map here is because all of these areas are the only ones that freaking, like, you look at how many ridings are stuffed into this little spot, and it's worth, like, you know, it's the equivalent of this.
This has been quite a back and forth for the past few hours, and we are able to make that declaration now. Todd,
Jazz neat.
Yeah, and Omar,
Well, I'm more curious if Pierre's going to end up winning his. And Jazz, I mean, I want Jagmeet to get out of here, but
when the polls closed and when we're getting those results, and the Conservative Bryson Jenkins had what seemed to be a pretty respectable
yeah, they are rental only.
Now
They're not
the
families
point where
buying
we
them.
declared Sean Fraser as the winner, and so again, you start wondering
this is
about
the
those
green seat.
advanced polls, and if those got
Elizabeth
counted
May.
later, and if that's what created a bit of a surge for Sean Fraser. I want to go to another riding. Terra Nova,
Yo, Vancouver
Peninsula's
looked.
on,
Didn't spend enough time over here.
Newfoundland.
My audience is.
This is one where Jonathan Rowe had a slight edge.
Yeah,
ahead of,
T. Doyle.
or
That's
he
a
had
bummer.
fairly healthy lead over.
Jagmeet's gonna lose. That's there's hardly any votes counted.
Look at that. It's a lead of just 23 with only 4 polls left to count. So that one is extremely close.
Yeah, it would have been great if the NDP was to get smoked, but not at the cost of the Liberals getting a majority. So at least the NDP winning a few seats was probably enough to keep. Like, look, this could have been a Liberal seat. We're gonna have an NDP seat here.
Contestant by 5,000.
That was never gonna go Conservative.
You wonder if those advance poll votes had been counted and whether that created a bit of a surge for the Liberals in a couple of Nova Scotia ridings anyway. Let's go to Montreal now, where Mitsui is standing by.
Yeah, those betting markets seem to kind of nail it down.
Well, the story in Quebec tonight is what's happening to the Bloc Québécois. At this point, the Bloc is trailing in a lot of ridings where they should be leading. If we look at the possible
Canada
seat
coming up for
changes,
sure.
the Bloc at this point stands to lose about 9 or 10 ridings. That number keeps changing over time. We see that it's 9 right now, but it's been 10 sometimes. The Bloc has really struggled to define itself this campaign. Quebecers say they're torn. They really like the Bloc. They say their hearts are with the Bloc. And the Bloc did run a good campaign.
Checking Pierre.
But the people say they're worried about global trade wars. They're worried about Donald Trump.
Can't believe Pierre's going to lose.
And under these circumstances, they say sovereignty is a hard sell this time. Now, an example of what's happening to the Bloc, if you look at Longueuil,
T. Doyle, you predicted a minority for the Liberals? Like you thought that was going to happen? Sorry?
A huge lead, but you got to remember that this is a riding where the Liberals are traditionally not strong at all. And the Liberals are leading here. And also, we go back to Trois-Rivières.
Wow, look how close that is. That was
where we said was
18
a very good
votes.
indicator of what was to come. Now, it was a 3-way race. The Liberals are ahead of the incumbent Bloc. Still, though, overall in Quebec, the Bloc are leading
I guess,
at about
you know,
24,
this is actually
25 seats.
really getting close.
So
I can't believe they called it for the
seats,
Liberals.
But they're looking at the possibility of holding that balance of power. We'll go over now to Ottawa.
We're seeing these numbers
Patricia?
are...
Mitsui,
Dirty
we
Martinez,
know
it's
Mark Carney The Prime Minister now has
Looks
a
like
seat
Pierre
elected
could lose his
in
seat, but it's
Nepean,
kind of early to
next
call.
door in Carleton. So interesting
Oh,
in
they're
this
talking about it right
riding,
now. Let's
as
tune
results
in.
have just started to trickle in, and the early
Like,
ones,
that's hardly
about
any
5
votes.
polls reporting, show the Liberal Bruce Fanjoy with the lead over Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Now, very interesting, does not necessarily mean Poilievre is in trouble. Maybe it means we are. Could be a long night due to that very long ballot in Carleton, although I don't want to complain about that when I hear Todd Battis saying it's
That was the
after
insane
midnight
ballot.
where he is. But it will be an interesting riding, certainly, to watch as those results start to come in. Again, there were 91 names on that ballot. Now, elsewhere, outside of the city of Ottawa, Conservatives are doing well as expected. A rural riding that has typically gone very well. Stormont, Dundas, Glengarry, where incumbent Eric Duncan, the first openly gay Conservative MP, is now elected tonight. His
Canadians are
third term there.
goldfish.
And another rural
Just a
riding
new
with
idea every 10
historically
seconds. All it took
strong
was the
support for the Conservatives leads
mainstream
Grenville,
media
Thousand Islands, and
to
Rio
just
Lakes. Michael Barrett ran away with a
say
win in 2021.
Trunk is bad. He's trying to take us down.
3 in a row. This is a riding that
You
had
know,
flipped from
oh, we got to protect Canada. Mount up, Patriots.
Oh,
mount up, Patriots.
there, but we will continue to watch Pierre
Yeah,
Poilievre.
David, they want it. I mean, they want their properties to keep going up, and that's what do they need for that? Unlimited immigration, because without that, it will not keep going up. Especially because Canada has no intention of investing in our businesses or making us a business-friendly environment for global investors. And now we are going to end up even worse because the Liberals are going to absolutely destroy us from a competitive standpoint.
Potential pickup for the Conservatives. Roman Baber, he at this point could potentially
Great question. How was 91 people on the ballot? Like,
Minister of Mental Health, first elected in 2020. The results
it's
are
so
still coming in,
stupid
but that is a potential pickup for the
that there were 91 candidates on the ballot, and they're just like, yeah, that's normal. There's always 91 candidates, because I had 5 in mind. I live in London, highly population dense area, and somehow there was 5 candidates, but Pierre had 91.
part of the country are hungry for some change, and we got our eye on
Thanks, CB, and thanks for the Alberta info.
that are potential Conservative gains at this stage.
And Olivier, I definitely agree that the Liberals were able to use that
Let's go over to Calgary.
by saying, oh, look, you know, he's tied to Trump, he's the same guy. Because anytime I see street interviews, the street interviews are like, well, Pierre's basically, he's just Trump 2.0. Oh, yeah, no, I know it's 91 only on Pierre's riding for the ballot. That's what I'm saying. Like in my area, which is population dense.
Have gone Conservative, leading or elected in
My area is population dense, and there was 5 candidates on my full ballot, and there's 91 in Pierre's riding, just candidates.
Edmonton Strathcona. This one's not a surprise. Heather McPherson is a 2-time NDP MP there. She's very popular. She won with 60% margin last time. But I want to turn your attention to Edmonton Gateway. This is Tim Upple's riding.
Say about Alberta.
He's expected to win here. He is a 5-term MP. But it's the independent candidate here, Rod Loyola, that maybe could throw a spanner in the works. He was running for the Liberals. He's a former NDP MLA. He resigned to run for the Liberals. They dumped him fairly early on in the campaign because they found an old video where he was speaking positively in support of Hamas and Hezbollah at an anti-NATO rally. So they dumped him. He decided he was going to still run in this riding as an independent candidate. He had already ordered about 2,000 Liberal signs. He said, I'm keeping them and I'm using them. He just used a piece of tape to cover the word Liberal and some of the slogans. And he used them anyway. He basically came out and said, hey, they don't own the color red. I'm using these signs. The Liberals weren't happy about it. The Liberal candidate wasn't happy about it. So we'll have to see tonight if he actually pulls some votes away from that Liberal candidate because it could have caused some voter confusion there in that riding. But this is a riding that Tim Uppel is expected to win tonight. Let's go to Mijung in Vancouver.
We mentioned that BC
Breaking
was full
news.
of close races, plenty of tight 2-way races and 3-way races, because the NDP has traditionally done very well in BC. Now that CTV has declared a Liberal minority government, Liberals trying to hold on to those key suburban ridings. Let's take a look
Yeah,
at
they called
Richmond
it so early.
East,
Like, I mean, the gap keeps
Steveston.
closing.
It's a battleground riding we mentioned earlier. It's flipped between Liberal and
See, there you go.
Conservative in recent elections. Let's take a look at what's happening now. Look at what's happening now. Zach Siegel of the Conservatives slightly ahead of the Liberal.
They had Parm in the
incumbent
lead
Parm
originally. He's the
Baines.
incumbent.
Now, I've been
So they
watching
keep
his
call-
riding.
like
It's been
calling
going
it-
back and forth
They called it
between
really early.
those two all night. A really tight battle. This is
And yeah,
really could go down right to the wire. Conservatives leading at this point, but just a few minutes ago, Parm Baines was leading. So now let's take a look at
He
Vancouver
is a
Kingsway.
chicken
Now this
farm.
is a stronghold for the NDP, one that the NDP definitely wants to hang on to if they want to maintain their official party status with 12 seats. Don Davies, very popular incumbent in that riding. He is leading, but not by very much. Like, he used to win by a landslide. The last 5 elections, he's won for Vancouver Kingsway. But right now, Amy Gill of the Liberals, only 100 votes behind Don Davies. So
Wow, that is
this
tight.
is one the
That is very
NDP
close.
wants to hang on to. Liberals are hoping to flip it.
Yeah, David, and as you said, 5
race
candidates
right
in
now.
Mississauga.
Don
That's
Davies,
what I would expect. That's
personally very
normal to see on a
popular,
ballot. Somehow Pierre's
very
riding,
involved in the
91
community.
candidates.
You know,
Nothing
just
strange
last
there.
on Saturday when there was the tragic, deadly attack at the
Great
Filipino
question,
Festival.
A Western.
He had been at that festival, Don Davies. And
I
then when
have
he
no
heard
idea
about
how you're allowed to
the
be
carnage
foreign-born
people being
and be a
killed, he
Canadian
went
federal
back to show
politician.
his
It
support
makes
for the people
no
there to
sense.
see
I
if
don't
there
think
was
you should be
anything
able to
he
run
could
for
do.
any level
He
of
is
public
popular in
office
that riding. We'll see
if you're
if his
foreign-born.
personal popularity
Just doesn't
can
make
win
sense.
out over any strategic
Like, I'm not going to move
coalescing
it. Like,
on
you know,
the
I was talking about
progressive side. So we're
with,
keeping watch on those
you know, in the
two
chat
very
earlier,
close ridings and several others that are
how I
shaping
lived
up
in
to be
Japan,
real races.
and I'd moved to Japan,
Omar,
but I would
Mijang,
never,
thank you so much. And
ever
many
in a
ways,
million
BC
years
pivotal for the
move to
future of the
Japan
NDP. You see the tracker, as Mijang
and then
mentioned,
run as a
10
politician.
seats leading
For
in
one,
the
I
for
bet
the
you they have
NDP.
rules
need
on
12
you can't.
for official
But
party status. Will they even have that before the night is over? The results in BC, particularly on the island where they have 6 of the 7 seats, or had, I should say, at dissolution, that is really going to fill in the story for the NDP and the future of the party, and also the future of its leader as well.
Yeah, and really the
that
sort of
changed since
drop
we
in
looked
their
at it.
support in Ontario, a big part of the story as well. We'll look to get some of the key results in that province that are emblematic of that right now, though. We want to head over to the riding of Central Nova, long held by the McKay family, now held for a number of elections by Sean Fraser. A bit of a nail biter over the last number of hours.
Why did they call it so early?
Hollingsworth,
Was
who's
that to
actually
discourage people?
over
The polls
there
were closed.
at Sean Fraser's headquarters, I believe. Paul, over to you.
Look at it, it's 154 to 152.
Well, thank you very much. Look, if you're looking for a political, emotional roller coaster, we found one here in Central Nova. We pulled into town about 9 hours ago.
Possible?
And there was a feeling of buoyancy and optimism from Sean
Guys,
Fraser's
are we
camp that they were going to win.
about to see the 2017 Patriot comeback?
Then when those early
155 to 151?
in the early hours of this campaign
What
this evening,
is
when we saw
going
those
on
results,
here?
fear, doubt, and concern set
This
in.
is
It
getting
looked like
exciting.
It could be a Conservative win, and this room was very quiet. Feelings of despair set in, and people were clearly worried about the outcome. Look, when you look at Bryson Jenkins, what he accomplished in his campaign, we are told he's
what
a
drink do you
young,
have, David?
energetic campaigner. He's been knocking on doors for the past 18 months, had a very impressive rally about a week ago in Trenton, Nova Scotia. Pierre Poilievre was there.
Okay.
Peter McKay was there. His father, Elmer McKay, was there. They came out of that rally feeling that they had momentum and the ability to seal the deal. But the Liberals
I didn't think I would be cheering for NDP because they're my least favorite part. Vodka Cran, chill drink. Had hundreds of those through university. 90% vodka, 10% Cran. Yeah, I don't really drink anymore, but I never thought that I would be this excited to see these NDP seats. Oh, look, NDP, it's good. Because I, can't stand Jagmeet. I would love if all of Vancouver flips, except for Jagmeet Singh loses his seat. That'd be awesome. That'd be great. Man, I cannot believe this. We are maybe going to see it come from behind victory here.
Let's head over now to
Why did they
Anne-Marie
call
and
it
I wonder if you guys are taking a pool to see how soon we'll be back together again.
Look how close those numbers are, guys, right
Yeah.
now.
It's quite a result.
Well, yeah, I just switched.
Things
But
are changing.
It's very close. Look at when you're dealing with a minority that is this close.
Hell yeah.
You got to look at who your dance partner is. And Ronnie, you guys were just having a very lively discussion at this end of the table about who that could be.
Yeah. Well, right now it looks like it's the Bloc, and so I go back to my comment earlier about how does that make Western Canada feel? Because I've heard Bloc MPs stand up in the House of Commons and say really derogatory things about Alberta and the energy sector. So there's that sense right now, is Mark Carney going to owe something to the Bloc? And is that his dance partner?
No.
Is it going to be the NDP?
It's going to be the NDP. Look, they're at 11. They're at 11 seats right now. It requires 12 to get official party status.
Right.
This just in. If they get 11 seats, they're going to have no
Steve
trouble
Dixon, what's
negotiating
up, party
official
people?
status
Everybody having a good time
anyway,
tonight?
Because they'd offer their support to the new minority Liberal government.
But then we're back where
we started. And I don't think that's going to do that much to quash Western alienation after the 10 years we just had.
For the reason you gave, Rona, it would be toxic.
The Bloc is worse, but the
for Carney to go with the Bloc.
But I mean, the NDP is not going to be any better than what we just had for the last 10 years.
But depending on how this goes, I'm wondering, for the Conservatives on the panel here, is Blanchette on the phone with Poilievre right now, accepting those calls, wondering if maybe he's going to be I mean, it's not only the Liberals that are facing this question.
We are not going to be in a coalition with separatists.
So
that would never happen.
Well, then I guess then, if that's...
what's going to happen here is Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre are going to have to work together. They're going to have to figure out where they have some common ground.
If he stays.
He'll stay.
Yeah. But I mean, I appreciate the discussion that we're having.
That bench is getting pretty heated.
I think also this election has been very different, right? Canadians are wanting the parties to work together because we have a significant threat before
All right, this guy keeps saying the same thing about Trump being the threat, but it is an interesting point because what are we going to see if the Bloc... So, okay, Conservatives working with the Bloc only makes sense if they want to foil the insane Liberal plans. Problem is, the Bloc is always on board for the insane Liberal plans. So they would be more likely to partner with the Liberals. And then, like they said, imagine a coalition at the federal level between the Liberal government. Guys, if you haven't watched my video of today about Quebec, watch it tomorrow. Because
people come from outside and land in Ottawa and get chewed up by the gears.
It's insane that Quebec has the power that they have, and now that we are seeing the Bloc, because the Conservatives and the Liberals are going to be so split, the Blocs are going to have way more power now because they're going to go, oh, well, who wants to court us? Who wants to promise Quebec way more stuff? I love that Jack Meat's in third. You're the worst.
Dance party inside happening down in the basement of the Liberal Party of Canada, where he's got to find his way to reaching his economic goals, which I think he sincerely believes in, when there may be a lot of people inside his party who might not be, super supportive of some of those things.
James, I want to take that thought bubble that I can see that's above your head and get you to say it out loud. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, look, when you're elected into a majority government, then you can kind of plan out your agenda over the course of 36 to 48 months. When you're elected into a minority government, you have to prioritize, and you have to look around the nature of the parliament that's in front of you and where you can get your votes, what requires legislative approval, what you can do by government
No
council,
tequila
what you can
sodas
do
in the
through
chat?
partnership with provinces or do through Budget Implementation Act. So as a Prime Minister in a minority government, it'll be incumbent on Prime Minister Carney to say, these are my priorities, and before he puts those priorities out there, do proper consultation and recognize that he doesn't have a majority of the House. He doesn't have a majority of the popular vote. He has an obligation to respect the democratic mandate that is expressed in the entirety of Parliament and work with others in order to get things done. He is correct. Prime Minister Carney is correct that the biggest challenge that Canada will have, at least
these guys were kind of saying it,
and probably for the next couple of years,
if the Liberals, who shouldn't even have got as many seats as they did, decide to start partnering with the Bloc, they are essentially saying, Alberta, Saskatchewan, we don't care about you at all. We already know that that's what Mark Carney thinks, which is so funny because I'm from Edmonton. I really just want to burn Alberta to the ground, but I am from Edmonton.
To come forward and to be prepared to do that.
Okay, so for those of you who know Mr. Poilievre, then Canada First and Canada Strong work together.
Steve Dixon. The Jag Meat will have more time to skateboard and do TikToks. Exactly.
little bit.
He can do his
further
get
to the
ready with
center, because
me's, where he
right
just
now, as you said, he's
ties
got
his
that
hair in his
basement
little
full of left-wing
bun, and he can
socialist
put on his makeup and do all his little TikTok dances that he does.
NDP voters.
Not sure that's an exact quote.
NDP voters, I'll paraphrase. And he, for instance, his platform is more spending than Trudeau ever did. He also has a higher industrial carbon tax and then a carbon tariff at the border. And so when you look at tax increases and big spending, I don't think many Canadians want that. Definitely no Conservatives want it. So maybe he can back
You
away
can
from
say
some
I
of
don't
those
think
things
many
and
Canadians
work
want
with
it.
Pierre on some of those things.
And maybe I'm romantic.
But they just voted for Liberal
naive, or maybe
spending.
I'm both. But it has been said, and it's true, it's one of my favorite quotes in politics, it's remarkable what you can achieve if you don't care who gets the credit. And if the purpose of Parliament is to nation build, and the purpose of Parliament is to bolster the Canadian risks against a President of the United States who today is joking about us being a 51st state,
On election
who
day.
mocks our country, who mocks our Prime Minister, if the threat against Canada from the President of the United States isn't enough for us to work together, if you don't care who gets the credit through 2025 and 2026, let's talk politics in 2027, 2028. But for now, let's get through this threat. Let's get through this. Let's make the country stronger and work
Steve
together.
Dixon,
I think
we were
that's what
talking about
Canadians
the
want more than
XRP.
anything out of this Parliament.
And you've already seen, but you're already seeing this right now.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I have to agree with James.
What's
on
wrong
this.
with
Absolutely.
Quebec?
That's what Canadians
They're
expect.
French.
And if you don't,
Exactly,
guess what? Next
David.
election, they're going to send you in this wrong.
Yeah, sorry,
But
Alberta.
I always thought of James as a real romantic, I have to say. But
Watch my video
I
tomorrow.
think he's really romanticizing
Watch
the
my video
situation
tomorrow,
here,
and you will
because
see how much
when we
Quebec
talk about
sucks.
belligerent, really, that's a word that most of us would associate with Pierre Poilievre, and
They're
I think it's going to
literally
be really difficult
holding
to try and
Canada
make that dance
hostage.
party work in the House of Commons.
They only want to work with who's going to give them
looking at on the screen right now. We're talking about Mr.
the
Poilievre
most
working
free
with Mr.
stuff.
Carney. That may not be the case. Then where do we land?
Let's see where they are.
Where does your romantic mindset get us?
James,
The night is young.
Send us a Valentine.
Well, look, I think Pierre will still win his riding. The people in the district have known him for 20 years and all that. But look, aside from the immediacy.
Well,
of the
saying
United States
Pierre
right
will
now,
still
we're talking about the
win
next
his
4
riding
years.
is
I think Canadians don't want to go into another
pretty
election
bold.
very soon, very quickly. And I think that it's going to be incumbent
There
on
should have
Mr.
been
Carney
more
to make
blocks.
those bridges built on sturdy public policy that will be beneficial to all of the country. Like Rana, by the way, I am
Should
a
have
little bit
been.
leery about the Bloc Québécois. I don't doubt what
I
Mr.
wish they
Mulcair
won
says
more.
about Premier Legault
Even though I
and the province of
cannot
Quebec wanting to do some
stand
things that are good for the
Quebec.
country and to protect Quebec and all of Canada.
It
from
would
the
have
threats
taken
of the
away a
United
lot of
States.
seats
However,
from
the
the
Bloc
Libs
Québécois are a different
that
political
had a
animal, and
conservative
their real
minority.
goal, in my view, are the 2026 provincial elections in the province of Quebec and supporting the Parti Québécois and what risk that threatens to the country. But for the rest of this
We got a
year
lot of
and
XRP
early into
army
next
in the
year,
chat.
the two main parties that aspire to govern this country need to make sure that they're working for the benefit of the country and not for the benefit of the next election campaign. Because Canadians don't want a campaign. They want this country strong and united to push back against Donald Trump. That means getting Canadian and Alberta resources to global markets. It means Conservatives recognizing the shortcomings of their campaign. And little things like, for example, boots, not suits. Successful political parties invite people in. You don't push people away. You don't say, look, what's wrong with wearing a suit to work every day? I do. What's wrong with working in the professional services? I understand what Mr. Poilievre was saying in the campaign about boots, not suits, but how about boots and suits? How about making sure the political party grows? You don't grow and succeed as a political party if you're saying to cohorts of Canadians, you're not welcome here. You grow the political party by welcoming
Mr.
people
Goodbar,
in. And so
potentially.
that small example magnified
I
across
think-
the country. If the Conservatives do that and the Liberal
I don't know. I think the
Prime
PPC is
Minister,
kind of
I think, makes
done
appropriate,
after this because
recalibrations given the results tonight that it's not a majority. I think we can put country first.
And
We
let's-
can put
it,
also
Brian,
forget
it,
some
for
of-
sure.
some of the other
Like
voters, when it comes to
that,
progressive
they're
voters,
they're
they were
acting
very
like
concerned with
it's
what,
Canada's
Pierre
job
Poilievre was saying.
to just
And so some
mount
of
up
that NDP
patriots
vote
and be
did,
against Trump, and
obviously
it's like,
shift also because
guys,
of him.
they
And
are
something that
our
he has to also
number
realize as
one
well is
trading
how to speak
partner.
to all Canadians.
Okay.
I just think we do have a very good opportunity right now. Canadians are not going to tolerate political infighting when you have a significant threat like this. And I think Mark Carney has been right. He's demonstrated, even the little time that he has been as Prime Minister, how he's brought people together, focused on
it'll be
diversifying
surprising
our
if,
market.
PP loses
And
his
I
riding.
appreciate the thing about spending more. But the thing is, he's got a
Sauce
proven track
Penguin,
record
another
of
part of the
investment.
XRP
So
army.
we need to
We
grow
got a
our
huge XRP
economy.
crew in
We
here.
need to diversify significantly.
Right.
And one of the key things that Mark Carney's talked about is the interprovincial trade barriers. We need to get that sorted out and also diversify our markets to Europe.
It's
and
so
also let's
funny
not forget the Pacific as well.
because
I know this conversation is going to continue.
they always talk
Cameron,
about
but
the
I'm gonna send it over to
interprovincial
Becky as
trade
well.
barriers, the
All right, Emery,
interprovincial
thank you so
trade
much.
barriers,
Let's,
which
head
again
on over
cost
to
Canada
Natalie Johnson, who's
hundreds of
standing
billions
by
of dollars
in the riding of University of
based
Rosedale with
on
Chrystia
how
Freeland.
bad the
And
relationship
Natalie, I'm
is
wondering,
between
what kind of
provinces.
role
But they
Chrystia Freeland
always seem
sees
to leave
in,
Quebec
Mark
to the
Carney
bottom of the
government now.
conversations, and maybe it's because of the French. You know
Well,
what,
that's a great question,
David?
Omar. I'll ask her that
I'm a
right now. She would,
BTC
of
guy
course,
myself, but I am
been
part of the
an
XRP
intimidating
army. But I
incumbent
am.
to go up against
I'm.
a political powerhouse who played
Let me see.
a
I have a
role
favorite
in triggering this snap
BTC
election.
meme.
Chrystia, congratulations on
don't know if you'll
reclaiming
be
your
able to see
very
it.
red riding here at University Rosedale. But we know that the picture is not quite as merry across the GTA. Can you tell me how you're feeling right now about how slim
Oh, we love
the
this lady.
minority
She's very smart, very
standing is
cool.
at
Let's
this
listen to what she
moment,
has to say.
and the GTA seats that the Liberals
This
may
is
or
a
may not
strong,
hold.
independent woman.
You know, Natalie, I think it's important for us
Wow,
to have
2017,
a
nice.
little bit of perspective when we look at this result. And for me, I look back to as recently as December, when everyone was writing the Liberal Party off. People were even talking about whether we would retain official party status in the next election. And so tonight, when it is clear that we are going to form government, from my perspective, that is an outstanding result. And I do want to say Prime Minister Mark Carney has been doing a fabulous job in his brief weeks as Prime Minister. And
She's trying to
leading
get
this
another cabinet
campaign.
position.
This is a great night for the Liberal Party, but even more importantly, this is a great night for Canada, because I really believe the ballot question has been who can fight for Canada?
Ugh.
Who can stand up to Donald Trump? Who
Well,
can
you
defend
Canadians
our sovereignty?
smarten up, especially
Who
you,
can
Arturo,
defend our
in the
national
chat.
economic interests?
Are you still here,
And
Arturo?
who
You
can seize
freaking
this moment to
traitor.
build Canada? And Canadians have answered.
Yeah, I would love to be
You
at
told me
Chrystia
earlier
Freeland's
today
party.
that
Hopefully,
when
we
you
should have a couple
resigned your role
drinks.
as
We could
Deputy
get a little
Prime
loose.
Minister and Finance Minister back in December, there were some people who were upset with you for that decision. Doesn't this feel like a redemption story for you here today, now that you see how well the Liberals have done compared to where they were at the end of last year? And what role do you think
Took
you
me
might
forever
play
to find, but
in
that's
Mark
for you,
Carney's
David.
next government?
Like Bitcoin meme.
I knew the morning that I resigned that it was the hardest
favorite
thing
Bitcoin meme, that's how I
I
live my
had
life.
ever done in my professional life, and I knew it was the right thing to do.
Up.
And my conviction around that has just grown with every passing day.
Do you anticipate staying on
You know,
as
she's
Transport
hard to
Minister,
watch,
and what
but
role
she
might
just-
you
you
play
can
in the
tell
Trump
she
tariff
just
discussion?
Have elected a fabulous prime minister,
Great time
someone
at
who
party.
has done a terrific job in the role of prime minister in the weeks he's been doing it, and who has
Sup,
led
Lauren?
an astonishing campaign. The ball
Welcome
is in
to the
his
chat.
court now, and I have
Congrats
to
on the
say,
baby,
for
brother.
me, tonight is about
Exciting stuff.
really being so grateful.
And
to
yes,
the
let's
people
go
of University
CPC.
of
We can
Rosedale
maybe
that
see
they've
if we can get
elected
some.
me for the 5th time, thanking them for the amazing conversation.
Yeah, David,
we had,
that
and the
meme.
really
You got
strong
that meme.
results
I
and
send that every time
strong
Bitcoin
vote of
moves at all.
confidence we've
That's my
had in
friends.
this community, and the great work of all my supporters.
Yeah, exactly,
Well, thank you
Breen.
very much.
She wants another cabinet
Congratulations,
position.
Mr.
She was
Freeland.
smart. Separate herself from Trudeau. It doesn't matter,
Throughout this
okay?
campaign,
Because
the big ballot question here was about the future of Canada.
they're making a really good statement there when they're talking about the ballot question. Because every time I saw those stupid frickin' liberals going, well, you don't actually vote for the prime minister, you vote for the person in your riding. Most people don't even know the name of their MP. They just know, do you vote blue, do you vote red, do you vote orange? And then they look for that name on the ballot and they vote for that. So yes, in theory, if you want to get into specifics, yes, you vote for your MP in your riding, and that dictates the party's status there, if they are going to be in control of Parliament, blah, 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 all the nonsense. But people are voting for the leader of the party. That's how they make the decision, based on the leader of the party. So it's very disingenuous for all these libtards, these woke weirdos.
Set in motion the events
Come on.
that ultimately contributed in large part to Mark Carney winning. Obviously, another part was Donald Trump, but I think, interesting to hear those comments, and certainly she was a huge part of this story. If I could just quickly direct our attention to the board and where things stand. It is very fluid, but it has also been incredibly tight over the last number of minutes. We're seeing a little bit of a widening, but boy, oh boy, when they were both in the 150s, for example, even the popular vote, I think there's not a huge difference right now between the Conservatives and the Liberals. So much like the polling firms and including Nanos Research had predicted, this is an incredibly tight race in the public opinion polls, or pardon me, in the popular vote, but also in seats. And just the construct there of what this might mean, particularly if the Liberal number ends up being lower than 160. The
Conservative candidate whose name I can't say won.
Right now it's going in the opposite direction.
We got Jag Sharan Gaghal.
The actual numbers are going to tell a big story as well. Heather Butts is standing by to continue that part of this conversation and take a closer look at what the numbers say to us, Heather.
PP is losing his seat.
You nailed it.
Well, right now by a pretty staggering
number,
number,
telling
to be
an
honest.
incredible story this evening, and that is the tight race
almost
and
2,000
how things
votes.
are ebbing and flowing this evening,
but
really
to
just
make
how
up, probably.
close it is, Nick. But we want to take a look now at
Morgan,
the
did you
seat
vote
change,
for
because we're looking at the
Mark
national
Carney?
standings and how things are changing as the night goes on, and changing from what our government once was. So if we take a look at the national standings, of course, the Liberals right now leading
the
and
PPC
elected
survives
in
this in the
161
sense
ridings, the Conservatives
they can keep limping along. I just don't think they're going to get
Nick, the Bloc
more
Québécois
votes
and the
from this.
NDP, a pretty significant
maybe
number there.
Absolutely.
you have
Both
a ton
are
of people
down
going,
in the
look,
NDP, not in party
the
status
Conservatives
yet.
are going to just continue to lose this freaking thing.
Tell us a little bit more.
Let's
We're seeing the
try
NDP
throwing our
around
votes at the PPC and see if we can get some momentum.
I checked the history books.
I don't know.
If this 5% holds up, it will be the worst showing in the history of the New Democrats. The other worst showing was
Morgan,
in
are
the
you a guy or a
1993
girl?
election. A piece of history that Jagmeet Singh probably doesn't want to be associated with, but looks like that's where he's at.
No, we'll certainly have to wait and see how he answers to that this evening. But again, some really close numbers here.
Mark Carney's
at
very
42% and Poilievre at 41.
Well, think of Pierre Poilievre. Now he can say that he's done better than Stephen Harper. Right? Like he might not have been able to form a government, but that's still up in the air. But the
Skyrim
thing is
Warrior,
he's done
I
very
think
well. More people have voted Conservative in this election
probably going to make a
than
speech
in
regardless.
Any election in recent memory.
Yeah, there's certainly an
It's-
underlying
look, they're
story there. Let's take a look
probably
now at
lose at
the
this
gains
point,
and losses. So
but
the
he
Liberals
kinda
up
has to
1
make-
seat, and the Conservatives, as we were just talking about them and their popularity, up 7 seats, Nick.
Yeah, I think for the
An
Liberals,
announcement
even
just
just
'cause,
up
the
one, considering
party
they were at a
itself is
near-death
actually
experience
performing
in terms
well.
of
I just
where they
can't
were at
believe-
and where they were looking at a Conservative supermajority. You know, being only up
If
one
Pierre
is
loses
probably
his seat,
decent.
he's not
You
gonna
know,
be
for
the leader of the
Conservatives,
party
they can claim that they're making headways not just in the popular vote, but also in the number of seats. But bad news for Blanchette and bad news for Singh.
Certainly. And Nick, we're seeing an interesting story play out in Ontario, typically helping to decipher who wins an election. Right now, though, it looks like it's who's going to have a minority majority. They're making that ruling. The Liberals down 12 seats.
Yeah, we talked a lot about vote efficiency.
We need a PPC leader who speaks English.
Convert into seats. It looks like the Conservative ground game in Ontario was very effective at converting their level of support, even though it was trailing the Liberals, into seats in battleground Ontario.
Okay, let's move
Yeah,
over
they
to
won a lot of
Western
seats
Canada
there,
and
but
see
the
how
problem
things
is,
have
again,
changed
it was
there. Potential seat change for the Conservative.
guys in
gaining
Toronto.
8 seats in the West. The Liberals potentially gaining 6 seats, and the NDP. Nick, take a look at that.
The NDP is getting
down possibly
crushed.
10 seats.
Like I said, I didn't want.
We were talking about the feeding frenzy in British Columbia, with both the Liberals and the Conservatives going into British Columbia repeatedly.
Like I wanted the
because they saw
NDP to do
NDP
well, but
vulnerability. That's manifested
more
itself,
NDP seats
and
would
both
mean
the
less
Conservatives
Liberal.
and the Liberals have benefited.
Again,
Nick, so
no
let's take a
riding
look
that
now
was
right
going to
across
go
the country,
either
as we see this, the
NDP
potential
or
seat
Liberal was
change
going to go
right across the
Conservative
country from
probably,
Atlantic
but-
Canada to the West Coast. What stands out? What stands out the most to you on this one, Nick?
Well, you know, what really stands out is you can see the Liberals picking up in Quebec, Conservatives in Ontario and the West, and, you know, the NDP just basically a setback everywhere.
Okay, a really interesting story playing out here this evening, especially.
I just
for
can't
the
imagine
NDP,
looking at
and
Jagmeet
we'll see
being like, "That's
a little
the
bit
guy.
later on,
He's
you know,
fighting
where
for
those
Canada."
votes really went and where their supporters went. And again, right now,
knows how
CTV
to
News
scrape
declaring a Liberal minority. Back to you.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. Let's bring in Corey, Kathleen, and Scott right now. I want to go back to the story that's developing and emerging right now in Pierre Poilievre's riding of Carleton. We heard James Moore say just minutes ago he thinks that Pierre Poilievre will capture his riding. What's going through your mind, Corey, as you're watching these results?
I'm a lot less certain that that's going to be the case, because I look at all of the Ottawa seats, and
we need a
there's
strong,
some of the biggest numbers that the
strong
Liberals have
female
actually
leader
landed in the entire country. like the 613 area code isn't just going Liberal, it's going Liberal huge. It's going like over, averaging over 60%, with the Conservatives landing in the 30s, and in some ridings, in the 20s.
He is such
we saw this happen in the last provincial election. We were doing
party
very
leader
well
with no principles at all
in the Ottawa area for a long time, and then we just saw those numbers go down, 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 down. We lost 5 seats in the region, and that's in the provincial race where the provincial party was doing better,
cranberry
where the
vodkas,
NDP
David?
were doing better, where the Liberals were doing worse.
Vodka crayons.
You look at these numbers, and I think he could be in real trouble. I think he could be in real trouble because it's not just the Ottawa proper seats, which are dominated by public servants. Which
So
is
Cons
places
plus
like
Bloc
Stittsville and that
would
riding.
balance out
It's
the
also
Libs, but the
countryside.
problem is
the Liberals
the
are
Bloc
pulled off a big win in Glengarry.
The Bloc also have
for instance.
no
That
principles
went,
outside of
almost 60% conservative
what
in
is
the
going to
last
be good
provincial
for
election
Quebec.
just a couple of months ago.
And
So something
they
is
will,
happening in Ottawa, something is
again, watch my
happening
video
that is,
tomorrow about
unlike the
that I
rest of
did
the
about
province in
Quebec,
terms of
because
numbers. And look, at the end of the day,
Canada
Carleton
is
an
going
Ottawa
down the
seat.
drain, and half of it is because we keep catering to Quebec. So yes, the Bloc having this extreme swing power because the Conservatives and Liberal votes are going to be so close that basically swinging those MPs over, swinging the Bloc over, being like, yep, who's going to give us the most free stuff? And they're going to have way too much power getting free stuff, and they already get too much.
In particular, some really solid seats for the New Democrats. What are you thinking about right now?
Yeah, it's looking a lot like 1993 when Audrey McLaughlin, leader of the NDP at the time, brought our party down, lost party status, down to 9 seats again.
I haven't seen anything that verifies Russian internet trolls support PP. And the reason why I'm so hesitant to say they do that is because I get called a Russian asset all the time, and Russia's not giving me any money, and I want Russia to give me money. And if they were handing out money, you think I'd be getting some by now.
Courtney Alberni, a few others, even the North Island, which I wasn't sure was going to go
our way, leaning our way. The U.S. does not want Quebec. They have enough problems. Yeah, guys, what do we think?
I'm not sure if it was completely.
Steve asked in the chat.
The Conservatives some of our vote in
Trump wouldn't even take Quebec for free.
Liberals were the benefitor for sure, and
yeah, I want a ton of problems with a bunch of French people.
But those votes are on loan.
No.
He borrowed those votes. And if he fails to actually deliver on the U.S. question, those votes will hopefully come back. But there's going to be a lot of rebuilding if New Democrats don't form party status. Actually, I want to pick up something quickly on your other panel that was saying about
but
party
I think
status. And
everybody watching, feel free to weigh in.
Liberals,
do we all think Quebec needs to go? Are we all on the same page that Quebec's got to go?
Party status. And I'll tell you
I think Quebec's got to go, and then Alberta gets to keep more of their money, $13 billion. They can get more energy going, and then we all get more money. Not Quebec.
It also means they won't have a new Democrat on the internal board of.
I've been drinking from like an empty glass bottle for 40 minutes. I keep grabbing it and pretending that I'm drinking. I keep being like, yeah, there's water left in there.
This kind of stuff that actually will help the parliament run more smoothly. Listen, he's a neophyte politician. He's going to need help.
Let's hear what these nerds are saying.
So there was a point a few minutes ago, Scott, where it was like a dead heat almost. Like the Liberal edge was very small. That has since amplified, right? You're looking right now at 164 seats to 146.
Quebec
this is,
leave.
not a conclusive number at this point. What type of minority government does that look like to you versus, neck and neck?
I think the plurality is going to be reasonably solid by the time we're done the evening. And Corey and I were talking, Kathleen off camera.
You don't think it would be beneficial to Canada
ballots coming in toward the end of the evening? You look at a bunch of those close ridings in the 905, Bramptons, a couple of other spots. I think you'll see that the
Josie, do me a favor. Tomorrow, watch my video that I put out about Quebec. Because the video is exclusively about Quebec and their voting and their history with everything's going on.
How do you manage Trump?
And you will see why Quebec particularly has been holding Canada back from being successful.
We are in a trade
Canada needs to go.
partner with the world's largest economy, with the world's largest military. Our security and economic arrangements are in question. We are going to have to ask.
I don't know why the Elections Canada website's down.
Decisions that may be broadly unpopular or at least specifically unpopular among
honestly,
certain
Josie,
leaders, certain people, certain places, certain
the
sectors,
you know,
that's
a
gonna
couple
be part
smart
of the job
people
of
have
Prime
said
Minister, is to take some unpopular decisions. It is much
that
harder to do that
when you want something to happen, you bring in the opposite party. And in this case, Carney would be the one to broker the deal, like Steve Dixon's saying, because they always want to bring in the person who people are going to line up behind and make it the easiest to do. And most Canadians who are voting for Carney now would go, so you've got a bunch of conservatives who would be okay with becoming the 51st state, and then you've got a ton of liberals who are going to support Mark Carney. So then Mark Carney's going to go, well, we got to let America buy us. We got to get handed over to them. Carney's going to broker the deal, and the liberals are going to go, he did the best he could do with a bad situation. You know, he had no choice but to hand us over to the U.S. And then all the boomers are going to go, elbows up, we got to stand with Carney on this one. And then the conservatives are like, all right, well, Canada doesn't exist as a nation anymore. We've lost nation status a while ago, so we may as well just become American.
So there's a lot of cards to be played.
And Scott, as you're speaking, we're just
yeah, Josie, watch the video tomorrow. You will see Quebec is the leech is the best way to describe Quebec.
The CTV News decision desk can now tell you that she is keeping her riding.
Could you imagine voting for Elizabeth May? Just some weird lady just screaming nonsense into the mic.
The whole evening has been a game of 52-card pickup, and she hangs on to her ride, and the NDP are obliterated, and Elizabeth
This
May
lady right here. This is who you're going to vote for? Guys, this is Canada. This is how far we've gone in Canada that you're going to elect this lady? Come on! Oh my gosh, she starts with a land acknowledgement. She's good. Yeah, she's starting with a land acknowledgement because, of course, that's what we need to do.
I just had a word. I think it's the first time that the Church and State Kitchen has had a phone call from the Prime Minister.
My favorite part about the land acknowledgements is the Liberals are so far up their own butts that they think a land acknowledgement is like the woke thing to do. When a land acknowledgement is saying like, hey man, I stole your car. Thanks. Well, can you give it back? Nope, not going to give it back. I just wanted to let you know I was the one who stole your car. Oh, okay. Thanks, I guess. Like, how is that helpful? How is that helping the natives?
Is not a high bar. And certainly party status is a low bar.
Yeah, evidently we'll understand what woke's all about if she's the one who keeps getting elected.
And a party that works for that and represents working people across this country and brings forth social democratic values.
I don't know, Chris. I don't know if she's better than Freelander.
You know, New Democrats
if you gave me the choice between May and Freeland, I'm taking Freeland every time.
That Canadians care most about: pensions, health care, things like dental care. And so there's going to be after some introspection, excuse me. And I really think that, you know, Jagmeet will go down in the history books.
She did.
He has done some incredible things in this past parliament. But the party's going to have to look at some serious renewal.
All right. And Scott, I just want to pick up on Chrystia Freeland's comments and just your thoughts on that. What kind of role do you see for her in a Carney government? We know that Donald Trump has used some colorful language to describe her, so not the greatest relationship there.
3 drinks.
How can you bring unity within these former Liberal leadership contenders? How does Mark Carney do that?
It's 12,
and also
Josie.
Give her some kind of cabinet role that she'd be happy with?
Look, I actually think it's less challenging than you might think. Chrystia Freeland's very capable. She's a great minister. She's a great Ottawa minister. She's a great
standard Tuesday
minister.
activities for David.
Problems, managing,
couple drinks on a Tuesday. Do some accounting.
Of government. I think she's
I guess it's still Monday.
When we see her as a public communicator, someone that's trying to carry and summon public consensus, just not her strength. Even as we saw in that interview, to be honest with you. And so I think, to be blunt, he'll find a place where he can harness her talents in his cabinet. But I don't think, you know, I don't think she's going to be point on the Canada-U.S. file, as an example. I don't think she's going to be point on the energy file.
I think we want to head over to, actually, let's take a look right now where things stand in Pierre Poilievre's riding. You can see 40 of 266 polls reporting it is a close race. 1,500 votes separate right now.
Closed a little bit.
Candidate Bruce Fanjoy and Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party. Burnaby Central, here we've got Jagmeet Singh's riding with 39 of 200 polls reporting, and Mr. Singh, the leader of the NDP, right now sitting in third place. Certainly, Omar, if that is solidified and we declare it a loss for Jagmeet Singh,
the PPC got 117
and there is a loss
votes.
of official party status as well, his future is very much in peril. I would say also another key NDP riding that Kathleen mentioned, Hamilton Centre, Matthew Green, the incumbent NDP candidate, also taking a loss, or at least poised to take a loss.
Yeah, I feel bad for Jack Layton too, and not just because we're mustache bros.
Door to door, street to street, neighborhood to neighborhood. Completing an effort that started.
All right, it looks like Heather Wright is standing by. Heather, can you hear us?
When that happens, it's going to be great.
She will have lots to say when we do reach her finally. But if you're Jagmeet Singh tonight and looking at these numbers, I mean, he's not even trailing. He's in number 3 spot in that riding that he represents. So not great news for him. Hamilton Centre, we can see here that. The Liberal
David, if
has
you're
a
living in the future, who wins?
37-seat vote lead right now. And I'm being told that we do have Heather Wright with us. Heather, can you hear us now?
Heather's back.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so tell us what's going on where you are.
Well, so we're here. I'm just speaking a little quietly because the candidate here, the NDP candidate, Matthew Green, he just arrived. He is going to lose his riding likely here in Hamilton Centre. We've heard from Jagmeet Singh. He was in this area, in these Ontario ridings throughout the closing days of this campaign, trying to hold on to these seats, telling his supporters to hold the line here. But this, along with a number of other NDP seats here in Southern Ontario, look like they will be flipping. And so we're hearing from Matthew Green now. He's speaking to his supporters who a little while ago.
What is he saying? I'm trying to hear what communist nonsense he's yelling in the background.
This, again, is part of that broader story of the NDP collapse here in Ontario and in other ridings across the country.
Tomorrow we wake up, this country will be a different place.
All right, thank you so much. This is a huge upset just following along this storyline of NDP losses. Nikki Ashton,
I don't know if he was the
really
GOAT, but he seemed like he was a nice guy at the very least.
In the Manitoba riding of Churchill,
you know, I'm always going to respect the mustache.
Her Liberal competitor Rebecca Chartrand. That is a significant loss. When I had spoken to people in the NDP campaign, they thought that was potentially a pretty safe seat for them, so that's a big deal.
Well, they're not talking about London at all, but I'm pretty sure the NDP candidate had won like
one of those
3 times in a row.
Edmonton, downtown Edmonton ridings, which has gone NDP at times, including in the last election, now flipping.
She is actually, that's going to, she has a
ran for mayor, I believe, also sat as an MP
in London,
at some
actually.
point.
The London
Pretty
NDP
well-known
candidate
conservative
Lindsay Matheson,
figure in
and
Edmonton,
she has a huge office, so I wonder what's going to happen to that. She's been the candidate.
And official party status is significant. I mean, the NDP sitting right now, again, just right now at 8 seats, official party status is 12. It's not just a fancy title. I mean,
we just confirmed it was Josie who asked.
Money, exactly.
How many
and
for party status?
Increases a party's ability to advance their causes, public discourse, that sort of thing. So it's not just a title. It does carry some weight to it, and that's why it is important to reach at least that 12-seat threshold in whatever parliament you happen to be in.
One piece of quick good news for them. In this long tail now of bad news, Alexandre Belouris reelected to their lone seat in Quebec. We were just able to declare.
That's great news for them. I believe we have Colton Trail right now, if I'm not mistaken. All right, Colton Prell standing by. Tell us, Colton, where you are and what you're hearing.
Yeah, Omar, I'm in the Conservative HQ here, and the reactions tonight have been stark. We've seen intense anger, especially when we called the result, before we even had a minority or majority. But since then, that emotion has quelled, and it's turned into this level of disbelief. The number of supporters that I've talked to here that are stunned that they find themselves in what they feel like is essentially the same situation they were in 5 weeks ago
we're all stunned.
Significant. And in some cases, that disbelief is literal. When we saw the closing of those polling numbers, excuse me, of those result numbers, when they were both in the 50s, for example, there were chants of bring it home here. There were supporters who, despite us having called the results, genuinely still believed that this was up for grabs and that this was still available to them. That has subsided a little bit here, but what we're left with is massive questions around the future of the party. Everyone I speak to still says they feel like Pierre Poilievre is the leader for the Conservatives and they have their faith behind him. But at the same time, they're looking at the results coming in Carleton and again, wondering how they can be in such a tight race. It's been an array of emotions throughout the night. The party officials who I've spoke to have had a very different reaction, and I think it is important to highlight they feel good. I mean, this is obviously not the result that they were looking for.
And David, to answer your question, I can't run for president of Canada because I'm way too anti-immigration. And you just can't, like, if I was as vocal. Whoa, is he actually the CEO of Nestle and the new WEF?
Every single person in that room right now, Colton,
leader,
is going to be watching to see what happens.
No way.
In his home riding of
if the CEO of Nestle, you guys should look up Nestle's history because they have a pretty nefarious past. It's pretty funny. Nestle was hilarious. They convinced women to not breastfeed. They're like, yeah, don't breastfeed. You actually just need to buy our products.
Not looking good for the leader of the NDP.
Oh, breastfeeding, which is free, healthy, great for children. Don't do that. No, it's too free. You got to pay Nestle money.
The mood there right now. How are they internalizing what we are seeing in the form of these results?
Checking on Pierre's writing.
Vashi, they are trying to
exactly.
Upbeat. As you can hear behind me, they are trying to cheer for any positive result that has come in that they see on the board. But let's face it, in Burnaby right now,
spread's pretty similar.
Jagmeet Singh is polling third. He is far behind.
Well, Nestle owns all the water, Josie.
As well as the Conservative candidate, it's important to point out that these are two relative unknowns. He was the incumbent.
Yeah, exactly, David. So they were going to Africa, running misinformation campaigns to convince these poor African women, these poor, starving African women, they convinced them not to breastfeed their babies and to use Nestle products.
What is interesting is that in London, as well as in Windsor.
Oh, here we go. They're talking about London. I wanted to hear.
These seats went to Conservative candidates.
Yeah.
And I want to give our viewers a little bit of context. Pierre Poilievre was the last leader to visit Windsor. He actually visited Windsor, but his time on April 11th. But his timing may have been perfect in regards to speaking to the constituents there. He visited Windsor on April 11th. That was the day that the GM plant, electric vehicle plant, CAMI, announced that it was going to go under a partial shutdown, a temporary shutdown. They said it wasn't related to the tariffs, but it was related to declining sales.
Hey,
so
did you hear
once
that?
Again, he was in that.
Did you guys hear that? I said that in my videos.
Espousing his message while Mark Carney was.
I said it because I knew they were trying to get away with it.
Jagmeet Singh was also in Ottawa at the time. So whether or not, even despite being the last leader to visit,
they said because the candy plant was doing its layoffs and shutdowns because of low sales, nothing to do with the tariffs. But then that was getting used as a talking point all the time, especially by the Liberals and other things. Like, we're already seeing auto layoffs from the tariffs. Yeah.
The most unions of any party, despite the fact that Liberals and the Conservatives were actively courting unions that represented more than 1 million workers. But those
definitely T. Doyle.
Unionized workers may not have showed up.
Would be nice to not have to see them make announcement after announcement. That just boils your blood. It's funny that
a lot of different results coming in British Columbia.
Harper lost because he was boring, and they just wanted Trudeau. Everybody just wanted free weed. And I can honestly say, I have the ability to say I've never voted for Trudeau, even when he was doing the free weed.
Over the course of the evening.
Let's get to Heather Butts. She's been tracking the context in all of this, looking at the people behind the numbers. And Heather, what can you tell us?
Well, Omar, we're actually going to pick up on what my colleague Judy Trinh was just talking about there, and that is the NDP and how they ended up losing so many votes and where those votes went to. So, Nick, we're going to talk about vote efficiency. What does that mean for
I
our
want the
audience?
90s
Well,
back
you have
for
to think of it
Dragon
this way,
Ball
Heather.
Z.
You know, the thing is there's popular support, and the thing is that
but
the number
Nintendo's
of seats
pretty
you
chill,
can generate with the votes that you have, the more efficient that you are, the more likely you are to win an election. In this particular campaign, those smaller parties, the NDP and the Bloc, just have been crushed by both the Liberals and the Conservatives.
And let's head to southwestern Ontario.
Yeah,
We're giving
southwestern.
you a map, a visual representation of what Judy Trinh was just talking about. The fact that the Conservatives have really swept this
I thought they were already
riding, or excuse
counted,
me,
Martin.
this
Weren't they
region.
counted?
And
thought they
this
said
is,
that earlier.
as she mentioned, a place where there's a lot of manufacturing
But they're
jobs.
already
The
coming in.
auto sector is a huge employer in this region.
Yeah.
Nick.
Well, if you were
Absolute
27,
breakthrough
what are
for
you, a
the,
98?
For the Poilievre Conservatives in
David?
southwestern Ontario. And if you remember when at the beginning of the night we were talking
that
about
doesn't
races
count
that
as
were
being
too
a
close to
90s
call,
kid. It's the same
it was
as-
in this particular region, and what it shows
If you were
is
born
that the Conservative
in the
campaign
90s,
was able to punch above its
it's
weight.
hard to make you a
explains
90s
why
kid,
it was
'cause,
able
like,
to
you
pick
don't-
up a significant
you
number
didn't,
of
like,
seats
grow
in
up in the
Ontario
90s, right? Like, if
and
you were
to-
born in
and help them
95,
close
it's
the
like-
gap with the Liberals.
Okay, let's head
don't
towards
really
the
remember.
Kitchener area. Nick, I want to look at this riding. Kitchener Centre, the Conservatives in the lead by
No
781
way, the Conservatives are gonna beat the
votes.
Greens
They're
in
over
Kitchener?
The Greens
That's huge.
incumbent, Nick.
Yeah, and you know, great news for the Conservatives here, and you know, for the Greens, you know, they don't have a lot of seats to start off with, and losing, you know, Kitchener Centre is a significant setback for a party that's trying to make a breakthrough, and actually a party that's really struggling right now.
And Nick, I just want to point out, because we are talking about the NDP in last place in this riding with just 625 votes.
Yeah, and think of it this way: there are a lot of university
great
students
year
around
for
there, so the
Batman,
fact
sure.
that the Greens are losing this seat, the NDP are not doing well, is really indicative
Man,
of what's
I
happening
can't
tonight.
believe.
Okay, let's take a look at Kitchener-Conestoga.
Yeah,
Two-horse race
this Kitchener
here.
breakdown's
Nick,
pretty crazy.
The Conservatives in the lead by 592 votes over the Liberal incumbent.
This probably speaks to the organization of the ground on that the
How old are
Conservative
you,
campaign
Josie?
has in
Or
terms
do you
of them
just have to say your
challenging
year?
to
We're all
unseat
exchanging
the Liberal incumbent in Kitchener-Conestoga.
Okay, and Nick, let's talk about vote efficiency. That is what we were talking about earlier, about
Windows
getting out the
XP,
vote. Just
peak
walk
operating
us through
system.
this. The Conservatives doing quite well.
So yeah, think of it this way: with 49% of the votes in southwestern Ontario, they won a whopping 83% of the seats. It speaks to the effective targeting, probably the tour of Pierre Poilievre in southwestern Ontario, and how he's able to convert,
So you're
an
an 89 as well, Joe.
49% into like a majority, 8 out of every 10 seats in southwestern Ontario. And you look at the Liberals, you know, not being as efficient in terms of converting their support into seats.
We really see that, Nick, especially when
See,
we talk
this is
about
why I honestly
getting
thought
out
the
vote
Bloc
and
was
how
going to
they
do
are
better, and it would have been
campaigning across the
so
country. So if we
good
look
for
at
the Conservatives.
Vote value nationally, it's
If the
it's
Bloc
very
had
similar
won
to
more
the
seats.
polling information, Nick.
Yeah, it is.
Because every
Except
Bloc
for the New
seat
Democrats, think of
won
it this way: you know, they only
was
converted,
a
you know, their
Liberal seat
percentage by
lost.
1/3,
Look at that. That's
like
a great
6%
map.
to 2 in terms of percentage of seats. It shows how inefficient the New Democrats were.
Certainly a very big story unfolding this evening with the New Democrats, and it is seen right there on that vote efficiency. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Heather, thank you so much. I want to send it to
Do you know what?
Genevieve Beauchemin,
Did you
who's
guys
at Liberal
see
headquarters
all of
right now, and,
all of the
obviously,
news about
positive
the
news for the Liberals if you're a
NDP
Liberal,
losing
seeing
all
the
of their
fact that there
funding
is,
and not even having the ability to go around campaigning? I think it's really showing now.
give them the mandate of a majority
Yeah,
government
Ontario
to
is definitely a
react
blue wave. Sauce
there was a
Penguin.
lot of cheers
Or
and
Lauren.
there
I don't know
was
if you
some
want me to
hugging
call you
when
Lauren
the
or Sauce Penguin.
announcement was made that it was going to be a Liberal government. The minority part of it is, of course, worry. Some people are just like, I saw some people biting their nails still watching the screen a few moments ago. Now, I do have two Liberal supporters with me, Tyler Romans and Bernadine Clifford. They actually met door knocking, and they met up again tonight. So relationship on the road there that was budding, and then meeting up again here tonight. Just tell me your thoughts about when you saw. I know that you were very emotional.
I was. I came in here tonight unsure, and I'm relieved to see what happened tonight. I think the right person has been chosen, and I will sleep better.
I'm so glad the old white lady was there door knocking. Notoriously liberal white women are known for their great decision making. So I'm happy that they were in charge of voting a lot of this in. Because everybody's like, hey, we need to make some new policy. We want your country to do better. It's like, have you considered interviewing white old ladies?
I'm very excited about the early numbers. I'm very optimistic. I think it shows that...
I don't think there are a couple, David.
Liberals out until the race is actually over. And I do think that Poilievre does have his work cut out for him, and it's very exciting to see. I'm looking forward to how it's going to turn out.
You were both door knocking in Nepean, of course.
Yeah, when you leave London, it's blue everywhere. The area I grew up was blue.
Even though you were still apprehensive.
Look at these insane
the positive response that I
names.
got at the door.
There's
and,
only
when I went back,
there literally are only
out
Indian names for all of Brampton.
today,
Surely that's a problem, right?
Better responses.
Like it's not like you can't have some, but oh, the Green Party. There you go. We got Mike Dancy. Oh, I guess you guys can't see it. Here, let me move this for a second.
This election in particular is a very important one of our time, and I think the turnout is going to show that. I obviously don't know the numbers right now, but I think we're going to have a much higher turnout than our last
Look at these.
That's a good thing for Canada.
Look at these ridings for Brampton.
Is nothing but good things for this country.
I did want to ask, you told me before that both of you
Look at that. Oh, Maninder Sidhu won, and Ruby Sota, and Amandeep Sodhi, and Shafkat Ali. Great. Happy to see those names attached. Happy that we got those guys winning.
And shape a future that I would like them to see Canada as they grow up in.
Thank you so much. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Jean-Vieve Boschman there talking to some Liberal supporters.
Talking to some
Liberal
dweebs and Arturo. Arturo, are you still here? I'm kind of mad at you, man.
We knew there would be a coalescing of support, according to public opinion polls, behind one of the two parties, Omar. But my goodness, to what degree? Both parties right now have captured more than 40% of the popular vote. I think we're at something like,
we're going to have terrible, like huge voting turnout.
42.6%. compared to 41.9%. We're looking at less than 1%. That divide, that separate these two parties, like this is the last time the Conservatives won a majority government, they were at 39-point-something%. They didn't even eclipse 40%. They've eclipsed it, and they aren't able to form government. This is unreal.
I actually used to work sales
right to point that out. I mean, in any other context, any popular vote number north of 39% would have been majority territory. But the fact that the Conservatives there, you can see 41.9. The numbers are shifting as the votes are being counted. It is just another fascinating storyline in a night of fascinating storylines as the numbers are coming in real time. I want to get to Anne-Marie and her panel right now. And Anne-Marie, a couple questions for your panel that I've got thinking of as we're watching this data come in. Donald Trump, does he see tonight's result of a minority government as a weakness? And is there a scenario to combat that by offering a Conservative a chance to form cabinet with Mark Carney? Could we see that coalition situation?
I knew you would want to jump in.
Silence, It would be highly unlikely for a prime minister to invite an opposition member to sit in cabinet. There might be ways to informally work together in
Josie, I don't get it either.
At committees, there's lots of work to be done at committees together. What this is showing is that, look, I mean, the Conservatives have won almost 30 seats. They've grown their base. They won more votes.
Yeah, they called it way too early. They called it like 114 or 118. And then since then, it's gotten so close so many times.
The Liberals are coming back with a few more seats, thanks to the collapse of the NDP and the Bloc.
Flipping back and forth.
Everybody's got to come back.
And yeah, well, that exactly, Chris. That's why the immigration thing is it's one direction. Because here's what happens: first group comes over, they have a bunch of kids, then they bring their family over, like their grandparents and all that stuff. And then they just continue. And I mean, honestly, there's like certain communities who seem to abuse the immigration privileges. And I think we all know which ones they are. And I'm not going to say what it is. It's the Indian community.
Let me say this then to our resident romantic, and that would be James Moore. You called yourself that, not me. Is this an enemies to lovers
other ones too, but I think it's mostly one.
No, I mean, look, 4 months ago, Pierre Poilievre.
I was trying to do the Kanye bit. I'm not going to say what kind of doctor it is.
Ago, Mark Carney was going to win a big majority, and he didn't. So I think humbled is the right word.
Right.
Both parties, had outstanding turnouts in terms
Yeah,
of the
Chris. I mean,
popular
it's
vote
obviously
mandates
Indian.
that they have, but it's a question of the efficiency of the vote where it's placed around the country. In terms of go forward, I mean, look, every single day we all wake up and we report the headlines and we see different narratives.
Don't worry,
from
David.
Trump about,
You can clip it if you want. I've gone way harder at
he's
Indians in
going
my
after China, then he's
videos.
backing away.
I have a
about
video
fentanyl, no, it's
with
not.
like
It's about borders.
155,000
It's about
views where I'm just
capturing
yelling about
an auto
Indians.
sector back into the United States
Oh,
and repatriating
okay.
investment. On a day-to-day basis, you kind of don't know. But I think, as has been shown in the past, Ron and I sat on an NAFTA council with the former government because we put country first. And I think that, any government in this certain circumstance where it looks like the Conservative Party has a massive
I mean, when I say
high
Indians,
floor
I always say
in terms of what
natives.
its
Like when I'm
base
talking about
support is across the
Canadian
country. Pierre Poilievre did
indigenous
extraordinarily
peoples,
well in
I
terms of the number of
personally
Canadians who voted for the
still
Conservative
call
Party.
them
The best
natives,
result
even though
since I was,
I think people
12
prefer
years old.
them to be called
And
indigenous.
that's an
I'm gonna
incredible
call them
accomplishment.
natives.
But it's not efficient, and it's more rural, and it's more working class, and it didn't quite have the efficiency.
Oh,
in
yeah,
terms of
Chris,
seats.
you would
we
have
don't
to deal
count
with that all
votes,
the
we count
time.
seats. So there's work to be
I
done
have a few
there
buddies who
in the
work
long term.
CBSA,
But yeah, I mean, you have
like
an
border
absolute
security,
collapse in the
and
Democratic
they're
vote
just
and a
constantly
fall of the
arresting
Quad vote
Indians
against
at the
CBC in terms of
border.
seat count. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's lots to go through here in terms of the results. And
Yeah,
what
Josie,
the
of
long
course.
term, but
Look,
specifically with
here's
Canada
and I've said
US,
this in videos, and I will
Prime
say
Minister
this to
Carney
anybody in
obviously has an
person:
obligation. He asked for a
Canadians
mandate
are
to
not
become
having
Prime Minister
kids.
to deal with
Okay,
the United States. And there's
until
really smart,
Canadians
thoughtful
start
people
having
out there
kids,
who have
Canada
experience
will
with this
require
administration from
immigration.
16 to 20,
And I said it
and the
earlier on
current
this stream.
dynamic,
Canada
we can
used to
call
have
upon,
amazing immigration,
try to
really
navigate us
focused around
forward for
what
the
somebody
next couple
could
of years.
do
And I agree
to
with that.
bring
But
to
I also,
Canada from a
I think the
skills
allegations
perspective.
on,
They had a
Mr.
point
Carney.
system that was really desirable. People really looked at Canada and they said, "Oh, you guys are bringing over talented immigrants." The immigrants that we brought over prior, especially prior to 2000, but prior to 2010, were immigrants who wanted to contribute to Canada, to grow in Canada, and they would even tell you they want to be Canadian. Like I just met a guy who has a taco restaurant in Canada. He's an immigrant to Canada, and he's like, everybody vote Conservative. We need less immigration. When I came over, I wanted to be Canadian. I don't want to be part of this nation that's all messed up. So the immigrants who came to Canada, and we had an immigrant from Iran saying he's leaving Canada now because of everything that's changed. So obviously, if we're kicking out immigrants because of our poor immigration problem, the older immigrants are showing us that we have a broken system now.
Able to do that kind of a pivot.
Well, you mentioned
Yeah,
that,
they steal licenses, Chris?
Mark Carney
But they're
should
finding them.
reach out and Pierre should reach back. But also it has to go the other way. So we've got this split in the country.
Yeah, Josie, it's
The
insane that
issue
they
of
don't have
tariffs
to
and
learn
Trump
English.
Are important for a lot of people. The issue of affordability is important for a lot of people. So Mark
They're
Carney's
talking about
platform
affordability right
was
now, David.
one of big spending and new taxes. So we also need him to work with Pierre on those issues in a new budget. So there has to be the tariff issue addressed. There has to be the national unity issue addressed. There has to be the resource economy issues addressed. There has to be taxation addressed.
I think you know why, David.
Addressing the deficit. So all of these things fall out amongst this split that's almost feels like it's almost down the middle from a popular vote point of view. And both leaders
The
are
funny
going
thing
to have
is,
to come
Alberta
together
Google,
and work on these.
Harper actually
together.
had a
While
decent
those two
amount of
leaders are
immigrants
trying to
coming
work
in.
together
Like they
and
were
figure
still
these
having
things out.
250,000
What happens
plus,
with the NDP? We have Jagmeet Singh,
the
who's
other
currently sitting in
student
third place in
visas
his
and these other
riding.
things that existed. Like we
Who and what
had
does the NDP need to do
strong
next, huh?
Wiped out in Ontario.
levels of immigration, but they were just very specific, targeted people. And when you didn't inundate the system with 1.2 million people they had to keep track of, it was 250K.
Who supported the auto sector more than Brian Massey. And yet we talked a lot
Yeah,
about
she's a
the
little
GTA and the
wide-faced.
efficiency of the Liberal vote there. And
Chris.
that was proven tonight. But talk about a stealth operation. I mean, I don't think anybody saw the Conservatives running the table in southwestern Ontario the way they just did. So it was an extraordinary result.
Well, Josie,
and it reminds us that you can
it's
have the
smart
support of all
to
of
get
the
yourself an
union
emergency
leaders,
fund. Try and limit your
but
debt
that
levels
doesn't
as much
necessarily
as humanly
translate at all
possible.
into the vote of the union members who were showing
Because
up in large
investing,
numbers
if you have
for
debt,
Poilievre's rallies 'cause he
is
was
not
talking their language.
that smart, only because you have to really, really outperform your debt
I
interest
think
rate
that the
for it to be
NDP had
worth it.
become a little bit self-satisfied with the support of the union leaders.
Yeah,
And
sorry,
that was gonna be
Justin.
enough that
It's
it would
not looking
translate
good.
into votes, but it doesn't. And
yeah, David, BTC is good because it's all in USD. So, Josie,
for Mr. Poiliev,
I would say at the very least investigate some BTC.
Because there is a little bit of the, you have to be careful what you wish for in this, because they went after Jagmeet Singh with tons of money. They attacked him very personally, calling him sellout.
Sorry that you had to get the bad news, Justin.
They went after him headlong, and it worked. And a part of this result is that people who would have otherwise voted for the NDP went over to the Liberals and probably gave Mr. Carney that boost, that tiny boost, because the numbers up there, you know, Jim said
awesome planning,
in the evening.
Josie.
I don't remember too many people, you know, calling for that level of vote.
Awesome planning, Josie.
Atlantic Canada. I don't remember too many pollsters saying it was going to be a tie vote. I might be mistaken, but
yeah,
I saw that.
yeah, Lauren,
So,
people can move to Mexico. There's
a
actually
lesson in there for how the game is played, and plays into what Rana was saying before. Are we
I don't think it's game over,
that constant attack mode?
But
I'm not convinced.
it's
There are other partners.
highly
He can't
unlikely.
become a former, Carney could never become a former
Martinez.
partner with the bloc that's He's
what a
got
name,
8
Dirty
or
Martinez.
so NDPers. He's got Elizabeth May.
Chris is probably right there. Game's been over for years. But Chris, did you say you have 5 kids? In which case, hell yeah, brother. Nice work. Yeah, I can see it in the chat there. You have 5 kids.
I think so. I think
that's awesome.
Who tries to provoke the fall of this new government rapidly is going to pay a very heavy political price.
If we're going to take a closer look at the NDP and them rebuilding, what and who do they need to do that?
Well, there are good people out there, and you know, I know some of the names that have been thought of and courted. I'll give you one. I mean, the dream candidate for a lot of the people I know in the NDP would be somebody of the caliber of Valerie Plante, who has announced she's not running again as mayor of Montreal. Very progressive, fluently bilingual, deep experience in administration. That somebody of that caliber would she's not in the game right now, but I mean, I don't even know if she'd be interested in going to the party. But people in the party look at her as the exemplar of the type of person they would love to be able to have as leader.
Harjit, you wanted to jump in earlier. What did you want to say?
No, I think one thing is very important. We have to look at the state of our politics and where we've gone. We've gone very negative. I'm actually quite being polite when I say negative. It's gotten
well,
really
Turtle,
bad.
I'm not a Leafs fan.
And I've sat in the House of Commons for a long
but
time.
But it does seem like the Leafs are probably going to have an okay year.
Rona and Jane's been both at times we work together. He's been on committees to give us advice. I've been in the Canada-U.S. committee, both Trump administration. We were in, Rona, I believe, the U.S. when President Trump got elected the first time at our embassy. There were, so there's examples.
Yeah, I don't think there's a no confidence vote that comes anytime. It's actually, so while they were talking in the background,
just for the sake, it's us.
They were saying that anybody who tries to call a no confidence vote early on.
This is what Canadians are expecting.
Oh, Capitals fan.
So if we can do this, this is an amazing opportunity to bring back that unity. And here's the thing, though. This is what
but Justin, anybody who votes no confidence or tries to do that is just going to get Canadians pissed at them because they're going to go, look, man, we just had the election. That's our 4th election.
We'll be able to bring people together.
Where the Liberals won. Do we really need to do another one?
A lot of work on all sides.
So, go ahead, Chrissy.
Well, I was going to say.
Well, Chris, sorry to hear that.
Always about optimism versus.
You have to work all those jobs, but yeah, you know, it sounds you probably have a large household income if you're working every job.
Because he was very optimistic about the future, and he was talking about what could be done. And
yeah, I've talked about it in some of my videos, David, with the asylum seekers and the refugees, and it's very annoying because what's been happening is the Indian students who started getting denied for their international,
not just for the sake of
like the international students who were applying for their PRs and their work permits. They got denied, so they said, "Oh, I want to stay in Canada. I'm already working. I'm already doing these things," and they just switch they apply for asylum, and then they get to get paid for 3 to 5 years.
That's what it showed. Yeah. And that a big group of people voting Liberal were voting with fear because of Trump and tariffs. So I'm not saying one is better or different than the other, different motivations, and we are where we are. And
and the results would back that up. When one person would see as voting for fear and the other person seeing as hope, I think you could flip those back and forth.
Easily. Yeah.
And that's what the
they self-identified that way, though,
right?
As voting for hope as opposed to voting for fear. That's what they were. That's how they self-identified. Having said that, we are where we are, and this is a very tight parliament. And people are going to have to figure out how to work together. So whether it's Carney figuring out
David, I would be surprised if it was even as low as 1 million.
Front loaded.
Right.
Only because so many family members have been brought over. And then on top of all the asylum seekers, all of the other people are brought in.
There's stuff on cooperation.
$150 a day in groceries. I guess 5 kids, husband and wife and 5 kids.
Find some common ground.
So lost Liberal.
You gotta get to Costco, man. You gotta start buying in bulk majorly. They got those meat tubes of ground beef.
It will not work.
Yeah, Costco chickens.
And
you get those Costco chickens for like $10.
One sword length, 2 sword lengths away from each other. That's
right.
It's
the meat tubes with all the ground beef. It has like 6 or 7 pounds of ground beef in the tube.
Is what it is. So you can look at it negatively that.
Let's check out what
it's divisive. It is divisive, but it's also been extremely engaging. People
Brampton.
platforms.
I want to see what's going on with Pierre's seat.
They read them. They got out to vote.
Ooh,
Young people got out to vote. Across the demographic. I think there's a silver lining here. I know we're divided.
Guys,
we're going to have to work
bad
together.
News.
But I love that it was such an engaging election. I think that's healthy for democracy and it's healthy for the country. I'm very sad to see what happened with the NDP. A lot of really good people, really good parliamentarians lost tonight. And that's unfortunate. And they'll have to go through a leadership race.
You guys see those numbers?
I do think we're healthier with a multi-party system.
Well,
that's going to be tough for Pierre to make up.
People have had their say, and this is what it looks like. But we're not used to being sort of a 2-party run country. We're used to more diversity and more of a mix, more of a salad.
Yeah, but it's true the parliament is divided, relatively close in seats, 41-41 popular vote, divided. However, about a third of Canadians in the span of the past 6 months, a third went from voting for Pierre Poilievre to voting for Mark Carney, and then in the end kind of splitting in the end. But a third of Canadians have swished their votes around depending on the dynamic. That's not a divided country. That's a country that has differences, but differences of emphasis and choosing between. And I think we actually had 2 very strong, effective, honorable choices in Prime Minister. In Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, 2 very different people, personalities, presentation,
Canada, indeed.
emphasis, but 2 very good choices. And I think a lot of Canadians
Pierre's losing
vote
his
for
seats.
one because they hated the other. They voted for one because they thought that person was better than the other. And so when you have a third of the voting population swing as we've seen in the past 3 months, that's not a deeply divided country. It's a country trying to sort out the right answer and the right outcome in order to deal with contemporary challenges.
Yeah, Pierre.
The question is, are the Conservatives going to elect a new leader? I mean, that's a question, obviously, for another day for Conservatives, and we will find out then.
We're going to need a new party leader.
Do the Conservatives want to choose a more pessimistic, kind of a dark path, or do they want to choose an optimist? And I think that is also going to be kind of in the next step here, going to be part of the puzzle of how the parliament works.
James, I'm going to give this last point to you. So when Mr. Poilievre comes out tonight,
the Alberta, good point. I think the next political major change, major talking point is going to be Alberta referendum, and I think that could be one of the most devastating nail in the coffin things for Canada.
Here, Pierre Poilievre's own riding, because of this gimmick that these people had of having 90 names in the ballot.
Well, he's almost 2K votes
people are
behind
these massive
A Western.
Ballots. It's physically a problem. But look, the work starts, I think, now. He's probably on the phone talking to people now and thinking about and analyzing where he wants to be and what he wants to do. And also,
listen, he could still win the seat. I keep checking it.
There's a barrier here about
on here
about these things and respecting people's privacy. But Pierre Poilievre has a young family. He's been at this for over 21 years. He has had extraordinarily successful results tonight. He's added to the seat counts.
Yeah, it's almost a 2K difference
as a percentage of the population of people. And Stephen Harper won 3 governments. Pierre fell short tonight. But there's every reason to believe that
I don't think Rand Paul would do very well in Canada.
It is 28 and 29. By then,
he's considered radical.
Donald Trump will be gone. By then, Mark
right
will have a track
wing
record of successes and failures
in America.
That he can talk about. The dynamic will be completely different. And if the Conservative Party rallies around Pierre and Pierre is humble and honest
they're still talking about
this campaign and why he didn't quite get to where he wanted to get, then I think there's every reason why Pierre Poilievre should stay as leader and will have success in the future.
Okay, I'm going to let you sip that coffee while it is still hot, and I'm going to throw it back to Omar and Bashi. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Lots of things to keep our eyes on, just jumping off that point that James was making and Christy before.
Yeah, well,
I
mean,
think we're
watching this happen in real time now. Why
because all of what James laid out is true.
Canada's done because
the popular vote,
you look at it and you go, okay.
But if Pierre Poilievre ends up having a tough
Pierre
time in his own
Poilievre,
riding, that
who
may
is
inform the discussion of
socially
future leadership
so
in a little bit of a
unbelievably
different
liberal
way. We're looking at some
that
numbers
in
for
America would
potential
be
seat
considered
changes
a
in Atlantic
left-wing
Canada, where
Democrat,
I
not
think
even a
the
center
flow of
Democrat.
advance
That's how
votes and the
like
counting of
socially
them
liberal he
has,
is. Again,
has
this
swung
is
things
using
back
American
towards the
political
Liberals'
standard.
way. Todd Battis
He would be
is,
considered a
with us from Halifax,
left-wing
I believe,
Democrat.
and he'll have some
And in
more insight
Canada,
on this for us. Todd?
Yeah, hi, Vashi. And we talked a lot about
yeah,
this
Josie.
at
No,
the
I
outset
think
of the show,
Alberta
when it
is
looked
our
like
golden
there was some
goose.
real
That's the point.
positive gains
If
being
Alberta
made by
decides,
the conservatives, and then
if Alberta decides to leave, it's Canada's over. Canada has nothing. Alberta's a linchpin, basically, that holds kind of Confederation together. Like Quebec, it could get released. And this is all of your boys are planning on the group chat to go to Mexico, David. But yeah, Josie, the golden goose of Alberta leaving would just mean the end of Canada as a nation. Like right now, we already struggle to identify like, oh, the nation of Canada and its people, all that stuff. Like that's been derailed over the last 10 years. They spent the whole time going, nope, Canada is anybody who comes to Canada, aka Ontario.
So that was one of those ridings that we talked about at the beginning of the night that the Conservatives would have really...
Yeah, I mean, that's a funny thing. Like, Pierre Poilievre, out of his own mouth, said he was pro-choice. And yet somehow the Liberals were able to convince people that he is going to take away abortion. I wasn't going to argue with him on behalf of that because that's not the way I wanted to win over Liberal voters, but the fact is, facts are facts. No, Kevin O'Leary wouldn't work. He's literally a huge Trump guy. This entire election was based around, hey, how do we avoid Trump? How do we pretend like we have the moral high ground against Americans? How do we say we're Canadian, we're not American, we're so much better than you? So if Kevin O'Leary were to run, he's literally like, he kind of acts like Trump now. Like the funny thing is, like, he actually does kind of act like Trump, where they would have like an argument if that was what they wanted to run against him.
For fear of what was happening in the world outside Quebec.
Purge nights before the election, huh?
Of that, language wasn't the issue it usually is here in Quebec. There was a lot of concern about Mark Carney's ability to speak French, but it was interesting to see how many Quebecers said, you know what?
Yeah.
His French is good enough. And
that's a funny really statement that they're saying there.
Because of all the other more pressing issues. The Liberals did make gains right across the province, in the Laurentians, in the North Shore, in the South Shore, in the area between Montreal and Quebec City, most of them at the expense of the Bloc. Thérèse de Blainville, north of Montreal, was an upset.
Look at all these
expected to
seats
take that, didn't.
That we have to deal with. Just French people voting in a Liberal government. It's just these cities,
lost that
man.
Riding at a by-election in the fall. And the Liberals are leading in a couple of places where one wouldn't have expected the Liberals to be leading. Longueuil, Saint-Hubert, a place that's not traditional Liberal, it's a Bloc seat. And
so, Justin, what you've said is correct. If Pierre loses his seat, they can move him to another seat so that he has a position in Parliament. He can remain the opposition, the head of the opposition, all that stuff. But where I don't know if it's guaranteed, even though literally Trump lost him this election, but I just don't know because this was the election for the Conservatives to win.
A couple of ridings, but where that potential for changes is what makes it also interesting.
Yeah, Toronto and Mini France do need to go.
A couple of Liberal seats in the Ottawa area. One of those, the Bay of Quinte, which has flopped back and forth. 2021, it went Conservative and could go back to the Liberals. And the really, really interesting riding, though, what we're seeing in Ottawa is where Bruce Vanjoy is leading over Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, I can't believe
with,
that.
About 90 polls reporting that lead is fairly significant. There was a lot of talk over the last few days about the potential.
Yeah, Brampton and Surrey are hilarious because
you also saw Mark Carney on the board. That was a Liberal riding in
well, don't worry, Josie. You're from Moncton. We're not yelling about Moncton. We're yelling about Mini France in Montreal.
Well in
and
with a
yeah,
new person in there.
Chris, you're not from Ontario, are you?
It's really intriguing for people here.
Because if you tell Toronto people Brampton is Toronto, they will not accept that. Or Chris, where do you live? But the
there's a different mix of people in that area, and some who were very put off.
Yeah, Josie,
despite the fact
we're
that
not mad at
maybe they come from a
Moncton.
family that has
We
long voted
are mad
Conservative.
at Montreal.
Now, it's not over yet, certainly, but the potential for that riding to change tonight is what is really, really interesting about the Ottawa story, because we know Pierre Poilievre,
it's funny because
has been in there for more
if you
than
scale out
2 decades. We're gonna
Canada's crime rates, and you're like, oh, okay.
Continue to watch that, Michelle.
Good morning, Patricia. Yeah, here in the vote-rich GTA, it's not status quo. You'll remember last
All right,
election,
Justin, you just got off work too, so hopefully you had a great shift at work. Sucks that you had to come back to the bad news.
And they're losing it to the Conservatives. Look at this. If we look at the greater
you
Toronto
enjoy your
area,
food.
at this point,
Chris, mini Detroit, so you must mean Windsor.
While the Liberals, led by Mark Carney, losing 9 seats. And let's boil down where the Conservatives are making some of these gains, because there are
I do agree.
Where,
I agree that the mainstream media stole. They stole this election.
This is a big game
from the Conservatives. I think we can single-handedly say that.
Was an MP,
so first of all, yes, the thing that they used is Trump.
Was ousted by Doug Ford,
they used Trump as the talking point because everybody was listening. Every time they see Trump's name, they just freak out. That's the Trump derangement system is just off the charts, and they just freak out. And then they go, oh, okay. And then the mainstream media saw that. They saw that it got clicks. They saw that it would help the Liberals. It would keep their paychecks because they were getting billions and billions of dollars from the Liberal governments. And, well, now that the Liberals are in, not only is the mainstream media not going to be defunded, they are going to get more funding. Yeah, how can they say Trump ruined this country?
Seeing as far as NDP go, non-existent in this part of the country.
Carney broadcast Cox. But yeah, how can they say Trump ruined this country when he's been tweeting for 3 months? That's all he's been doing. He's been tweeting for 3 months. And they're like, yeah, houses are so expensive because Trump. So expensive.
Immediately, we're gunning for them. So let's just take a look at the seat change.
Yeah, the CBC gravy train does continue. And yet, here I am getting $0 from the media funds. I want money from the media funds. And, because everybody says, oh, you get money from Trump. You get money from Putin. You get money from all these guys to be a conservative influencer. And it's like, I know for a fact, I'm one of the few conservative influencers who actually says negative things about Pierre. Because when I see something that Pierre does that I don't agree with, I call him out. And then people are like, you're Russian propaganda. And I'm like, send them my bank address so I get the money, guys. Yeah, give me money.
And did not win as well. So again, we're left tonight of the 37 seats in Alberta. We have 34 Liberal or leading Conservatives. Amanpreet Gill has taken Skyview.
Yeah, it's so funny for them to say
Confederation. He is leading there. There was no incumbent there.
Oh, the Conservatives are so mean. What do you what is mean about their platform? They have huge spending deficits too.
There were 3 new seats, and they managed to take them all tonight. Let's go out to Mijang in Vancouver.
Don't even measure shit with the ruler.
You, Tara.
Yeah, that's fun. It makes me think of I just watched MacGruber recently. I don't know if you guys have seen MacGruber.
They've picked up quite a few ridings.
I know you. Fresh out of the academy.
Here in BC, and they came.
Thinks his shit don't stink. I got news for you, rookie.
Conservatives
like shit.
picked up, leading or elected 6 more. Liberals 4, but look at this, the collapse of the NDP. They are down last time.
So I'm not going to say Pierre threw the election.
BC, half of their whole
he was battling
total, so they are quite a bit down, including Jagmeet Singh, who's actually
David,
his own
Pierre and Carney. The reason Pierre lost, I think, is because he didn't do anything unsafe to make himself stand out. So then, because he wasn't standing out in the way that he should have, it was easy for them to be like, yeah, he's just Trump.
Not very experienced. against, but the party picked him over a seasoned veteran MLA, Mike de Jong, but he won there handily. Port Moody, Coquitlam, you've got Paul Lambert. The suburbs, very important.
Oh, I used to live in Port Moody, Coquitlam for a very short amount of time. Then I moved to East Hastings into Vancouver. I saw all the zombies out there.
His comments about residential schools, he's leading up
Yeah, he was too mild. Pierre was too mild. He was too safe.
Leading the Conservative, leading there. So we're going to keep an eye on a lot of these tight races here in BC. Back to you, Omar.
Tight races.
All right, Mijung, thank you so much. And I'm being told right now that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is about to speak in Burnaby.
I want to know what NDP's going to, or what Jagmeet's going to say when he loses. Let's hear what he's got to say. The song has been so annoying during the campaign. I'm not going to turn it up yet. I'll turn it up in a second.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
What do you mean by honey? Like, do you mean like commie? Like communist? Mild in Canada is still communist anywhere else, Chris?
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
He lost. What a nerd.
We're good. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it up. I want to hear what he says.
Thank you. That was very nice of you. Very sweet of you all. Thank you so much.
We don't love you, brother.
You're gonna get me all choked up here, guys.
Yeah, you're just crying.
Gotta keep it together.
His pension did get locked in, though.
Thank you very much. The love is amazing. I appreciate y'all. Big thank you to Suzanne.
Yeah, exactly, David.
She's been with us from the beginning. Huge thank you. Appreciate her so much. Thank you, thank you. And all of you in this room, you guys poured your heart into this. Thank you so much for everything you've done. You're amazing. We love you all. Thank you.
Oh, I see what you're saying, Chris.
And I know in election parties, night parties across the country, people are gathered. I want to thank them all for all their hard work. They're amazing people gathered together across the country. I want to take a moment to congratulate Prime Minister Carney on his victory. He has an important job to do to represent all Canadians and to protect our country and its sovereignty from the threats of Donald Trump. Tonight and every night, all of us here, we're on Team Canada. We want Canada to thrive, and we're going to continue to fight for Canada.
Yeah, exactly. He's just celebrating his pension.
I want to congratulate all the other leaders on a hard-fought campaign. It's been the honor of my life to represent the people of Burnaby Central. Tonight they chose... Thank you.
So annoying.
Tonight they chose a new member of parliament, and I wish them well as they continue to work hard for this community. Obviously, I know this night is a disappointing night for New Democrats. We had really good candidates that lost tonight.
Not for the rest of
I know
Canada.
how hard you worked. I spent time with you. You're amazing.
Wow, but still disappointing.
I'm so sorry you're not going to be able to
It's not that
represent
he
your
lost.
communities. I know you're going to continue to fight for them. I know on how many doors you knocked, how many family dinners you missed, how many nights your kids went to bed without you there to tuck them in. I know it was a tough sacrifice, and I just want to thank, and we can get a round of applause to every single candidate that ran for us.
Wow, it looks like, according to the charts, NDP's and Bloc are losing seats to the Liberal, too. This is why I said, like, as much as we hate to see the NDP do well, them getting seats was going to be better than the Liberals getting seats.
Thank you to all those candidates and their incredible staffs. One more time.
Ugh.
Choosing to commit your life to politics obviously comes with some sacrifice, but we choose this life because of the chance to change the country we love for the better. We may lose sometimes, and those losses hurt, it's tough. But we are only defeated if we stop fighting. We're only defeated when we believe that those that tell us that we can never dream of a better Canada, a fairer Canada, a more compassionate Canada. I have met New Democrats from coast to coast to coast who will never back down, even when they're told that there's no room for them at the table.
I just checked the yeah, she is the liquor. Andy. It's the shit winds coming, Chris. But yes. Good night, team. To be honest, I think it's probably over. I'm probably going to pack it in too. Everybody who came on the stream today kept the chat active, kept the chat live. You guys absolutely rock. It was awesome to be able to, I'm not going to lie, if I had to sit in my room and just check my phone for updates during this, I think I would have been a lot more sad. But because we had the chat going, everybody was making jokes, we were hanging out, because I want to do more streams. So, you know, I've mentioned it in my other videos that I want to start doing a lot more streams on here because it's like fun to get to talk with you guys, especially, you know, just seeing what you guys are experiencing. You know, we learned about Alberta and the land today, all sorts of awesome things that you can only get when you're actually, don't forget to buy XRP. Oh yeah, the chat helps a ton. And it really helps because you get to see that there's people out there kind of experiencing the same thing with this election. And we had a bunch of different walks of life. We had retired people, you know, young people who are just getting started, other people with kids. Well, you know, Dirty Martinez, it feels definitely not great right now, and especially because Mark Carney only has horrible, horrible policies. They're the worst, but it's not burning down. There's lots of stuff. And anyways, guys, watch the video that I put out today. You can watch it tomorrow because it's getting late, but watch the video that I put out today about Quebec, and you'll see why we're ranting so much about Quebec, because they are absolutely hurting Canada, and we saw that in this election. You know, looking at the map, the Quebec was supposed to get more Bloc seats in there and stop the Liberals, and had they done that, had the Bloc kept their same amount of seats, we would have done okay. But David, buy a house in Alberta, brother. You can do it. But anyways, guys, I am going to end the stream. Like I said, you guys rock, seriously, and don't get too depressed about it. We're going to keep having fun with the channel. Black of the Grappler. There you go, brother. Why weren't you? You should have joined the chat earlier. You could have had a 21-year-old weighing in. Oh, geez, Chris. Yeah, that was probably a good trend-setting thing. But anyways, I gotta end this for real. I came from the Quebec video when I saw you were live. Sad to see this. Cheers from America. Oh, okay, Skyhawk. Cool. Well, I've talked about America in a lot of my videos too, and I'm going to be talking about America a lot more because Skyhawk, if I'm being honest, there's a legitimate chance now that Carney took over, we're going to be getting taken over by America pretty soon. So Canada proved that tonight their #1 election issue was America. And, you know, if they're going to make America their #1 voting issue, why isn't America just taking us over? So here we are.